Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello and good evening. Welcome, everyone, to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, welcoming you back to another First Look. We're going to be diving in tonight to Break, a anime and classic SNES-inspired RPG of exploration and adventure and teamwork. This is one that came requested from our patrons over at Knights of Last Call Patreon, so I'm excited to take a look at it. This one's been kind of popping around on my radar for a little bit. There's sort of been this, I don't want to call it a renaissance, but there's sort of been this, maybe it is a renaissance, maybe it's upwelling, maybe it's just one of those like commonality things, but we've seen a lot of what I'm going to call classic 90s anime video game inspired games that have kind of come out. Maybe it is more Japanese style, maybe it's more anime and JRPG style, but we've seen games like Animon Story and Fabula Ultima and Beacon, and so there's been sort of and now Break. And so there's just been this kind of like, upwelling of games for the last couple of years that have been sort of been coming out that kind of really, I'm not saying that they're all different. They're all definitely different. But when you look at some of these games and you kind of compare them side by side, like when I look at the cover for Break and I look at the cover for Fabula Ultima and I look at the cover for Beacon and when I look at the cover for Animon Story, like there's definitely there's more similar than there is difference. And so it's interesting how, inspiration has changed. And one thing that I've become very aware of, especially as I've done this channel for the last 3 or 4 years and, Gencons and Origins is, and this has kind of missed me personally, is how, the influence of the role-playing game designers of, let's say, the 80s and the 90s was classic war games, stories of sword and sorcery, low fantasy stories, Fritz Leiber and Robert E. Howard and Ashton Clark Smith and stuff like that. And then as you look into like the early 2000s, I think a lot of those game designers were influenced by the game designers of the 80s and 90s. But now it seems like you're having this upwelling of designers who grew up in the 90s or the 2000s, and their inspiration is, the Nintendo games and it's anime. And so it's interesting to see this sort of shifting tides of culture shifting around, and it's interesting because it's interesting how each person is influenced by these different categories of media. Okay, so we're not going to wait too long to get into our stuff today. Let's see who's here real quick. We'll just give a quick shout out as we kind of wait for everybody to show up, and then we'll dive into Break. Sketchosaurus says, very interested in seeing this one. We'll determine whether or not I buy it after your review. Thank you, Sketchosaurus. Game looks sweet. Pathfinder PhD says, look forward to the first look. Awesome. Hello, Pepper. Hello, Sidon. Thaddeus can only stick with us for a few minutes. Hoping that the VOD is good. Thank you, Thaddeus. Let's see here. I gotta find my thing. Where did I put that? Oh, I closed it. 1 second. Gotta open up my thing. Okay. Before we go ahead and get started, Thaddeus did drop before the stream started. It's in the recent tip over there. But Thaddeus did drop a $35 tip. Thank you, Thaddeus. He kind of led the charge on getting this onto today's patrons. But it was a vote. It was a vote. It wasn't just pay to win, but it was a vote. But Thaddeus did tip $35 before the stream began and said, forcing you to cover some anime-colored OSR. And here we are talking about it. But yes, I want to say thank you to Thaddeus and thank you for doing that. Thank you, Thaddeus. Keith, I did see someone posted on the Patreon that Questing Beast apparently did a video on this like an hour ago. So I call it Kismet. Hello, Sorrel. Hello, Tundulus. Dr. Waits, I'm sorry to hear that. Take care of yourself. Hopefully it's not too bad. Roman, greetings, greetings. Derek, what's up? Can't stay omniscient. Glad you stopped in, though. Lance, as always, good to see you, buddy. Please take a deep look at both Battle Princess and Murder Princess. I'm assuming those are classes. Fantastic. Quest friend is looking forward to this. Welcome. All right, you just finished the Questing Beast video. All right, well, hopefully this is a different take on Icon. Ben says this is called nostalgia. Yes, there's definitely a nostalgia element to it for sure, Hello, Satir. Hello. What's up, KC? Ikemo says, I got break after hearing it's a bizarre combination of anime aesthetics, OSR sensibilities, and crunch. Interesting. Okay. I feel like this has been in development forever. It has definitely been, I think, under development for at least as long as my channel has been around. For sure. All right, let's get our PDF up. Bloop, there we go. Okay. So, break. A RPG. All right, here we go. So, break. Obviously, the cover art, the cover art is obviously very anime inspired. Although I will note that there's kind of a more of a classic anime look to this, I would suppose, than maybe some of the more modern anime. But still, definitely anime inspired. This is by Medrinian and Tartaglia. Sound like potentially like Italian designers. Again, we've also talked about this Italian Renaissance, the new Italian Renaissance. We've seen a lot of games coming out of Italy, and Spain and Italy, and there have been a lot of, and of course, obviously the stuff in Free League. So it's like a lot of European games coming on. It's interesting. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. Tun says my friend is 100% sure that some of this art is AI generated. I don't know though. Nonetheless, these days that's a nasty thing to throw around potentially. We got to be careful about that. I mean, some people in Magic accused some Magic artist of being AI generated, and then he literally showed pictures of him like working on the piece of art. So it's hard to tell sometimes these days. All right. So real quick, this is a large book. Apparently it's quite gorgeous. From the looks of it, the physical copy of it. But we've got character creation here. We're going to kind of go a little backwards because I don't want to get too caught up in all the details of all the different species and classes and traits and quirks and gear and homelands. And you can see there's just a ton of stuff here. So what we're going to do is we're going to definitely take a look at the sort of high level elements of creating a character. And then we're going to shoot ahead to the playing the game because I really want to get through the basics of the game. And it looks like checks, contests, the game basics only takes up about 11 pages. So I think that's where we're going to start. Then there's a separate subsystem, looks like, for journey rules, which is about 7 or 8 pages. People talk about how do you make, I'm not always saying that this is always a solution, but like how do you make things like journeying and exploring more compelling? Well, sometimes that means you need to create a space for them procedurally or through the mechanics. We have 7 or 8 pages on journeying. We have a section on exploring, including, by the way, you'll notice again that word procedure. There's a journey procedure. There's an exploration procedure. Talking about adventure sites, PC positions, yada yada. A negotiation procedure, a fight procedure, 20 pages of fight rules. Talking about perils, downtime. A crafting section, 14 pages on crafting. So you can definitely see where they are, what gets measured gets managed, right? And if something's important, you make the space for it. So, spend 14 pages on your book on the crafting rules and your combat rules are only 20 pages. That's telling you something. And then we get into game master stuff, appendices, information about the world, how to be a game master. It looks like a built-in bestiary. Doesn't look like it's too long of a bestiary, though. More of an example bestiary because it's only, it's like 70 pages, I guess, of monsters, but it doesn't seem like there's that many. And then we have character sheet examples, cheat sheets, lots of cheat sheets for all the different procedures. And that's really interesting. So, I mean, that's not bad. And then we can see there it tops out at 460 pages. So it's a chunky. A lot of love and care went into this game. So for starters, before we go into this is a first look, which means I'm not reviewing the game. I haven't played it, and certainly looking through the rules one time is not going to let me truly tell you whether the game is good or not. Hell, I'd hesitate to tell you if a game is good or not, even if I played it once. Usually I want to play it at least 3 or 4 or 5 times, sessions under my belt to really get a feel for it and understand how all these different procedures interact. One thing I will be interested to look out for is, one of the things, and I know Ben's in chat. Ben and I both agree that there's a lot of times people get confused about certain elements of OSR. And, for me, there's this idea of proceduralism. And it's the idea that you have these game mechanical patterns that are, sort of followed and generate results that lead to interesting outcomes within the game space. And if you look at the classic OSR, a lot of the exploration and other mechanics were based off of these proceduralism, like wandering monsters is a classic example of them. How long your torches last is another example of them. And this led to a certain style and a certain tone of play. So I'm interested to look at this. But as we look at a first look, one of the things that I'm looking for is what is this game about? Does the game have a niche that it's trying to serve? Is it trying to be everything to everyone? Or is it trying to carve out a niche and try to say, this is what this game's about? Do the mechanics and the elements of the game support that goal? And is there a reward system in place or a feedback system in place that creates positive incentives for you to do the thing that the game says that it's about? Before we break down into the rules, though, it's always fun to take a look at the character sheet. And we actually have a full one because they give us a blank one. They also give us a full one, which is kind of interesting. So I think we'll take a look at this first, just to kind of, bring into that. And Ikemo says the proceduralism is probably the only reason people are lumping this with OSR stuff. It has lots of that, but its other aspects are like a crunchier, more simulationist FabU. And I will say, when I see a 460-page book, the first thing that doesn't jump into my mind is OSR. When I see the levels of crunch that this game purports to have, I don't think OSR. So if OSR means proceduralism, then maybe that's where the element is coming from. Okay, so we have our calling, which looks to be like our class. Rank looks to be level. We have our species, size, homeland, languages. Our history looks like kind of maybe like a background. Purviews. My history, Starlight Farmer, gives me a minor bonus on sorting the good soil from the bad, preserving what you ought to, empathy for all living creatures. Okay. It's kind of maybe like a quasi background 13th age skill thing. Description seems like it might just be FBT, but we don't know. And then it looks like we have 5 aptitudes, which appear to be stats or ability scores. Might. And there's this kind of bar chart here that seems to go up and down. I'm not quite sure because it's at 8 and it's at 0 and it's filled to 0. So I guess the idea is that you can erase this and increase this, although one thing is called trait. So that's kind of noted. And then grit and insight seem to be higher than the default, but they also get a separate tab. So grit is higher at 10, or sorry, the base is 9, but the bar is at +1, so it's at 10, so they're courageous. Insight at 7, -1 to 6, they're single-minded. So it seems like, right, this is a positive trait to, having high grit, whereas maybe having a lower insight means you're single-minded. It's difficult for you to think of multiple options. And then aura, which is like your charisma. So basically D&D, but they got rid of deafness is like dex, might is like strength. Grit is like a combination of constitution and wisdom, which is interesting. Insight is kind of like a combination of wisdom and intelligence. And then aura seems to just be basically charisma. I kind of like that. I like this idea of this grit stat as kind of an interesting overlap of the Venn diagram between wisdom and constitution. I've seen other games, I think, do that, but I think that's kind of interesting. Then we have our combat stats. We have a base. We add this to my attack rolls, so +2. Looks like the damage is static. Hearts are our measure of injury. We have 3 hearts, and there's an injury box. And then defense. Looks like it's an AC system if we're adding a bonus to attack rolls. Speed is areas, so we can see that this game is not squares based. It looks like it's zone based, and it looks like we can move 1 area per turn or something like that. We'll have to get into that. Kind of a lot of space carved out for speed. And then we have our quirk. We have different abilities and just with page references here, although there's a little space for little notes. For example, we have shadow sight, so we can see in the dark, and we're immune to being obscured. We are Nightborn. We have a +1 dark point and dark gift. Don't know what that is, but clearly this is not super low crunch in an OSR standpoint. Looks like we have a lot of innate game-derived abilities, meta currency points, bonuses to attacks in certain circumstances. I don't really consider that OSR. Our gear is fairly light. Our worn outfit is functional. We use a slot-based inventory with a base of 10 +3 because of our bag, and then it looks like everything gets a slot. 10 arrows, tracking arrows, okay, tracking rations. Our bow, standard, shield, light armor, shovel, your family's best. We are a farmer, right? A Starlight farmer, and treats, and that gives us a couple more slots to think. So I don't know if that's tied to might at all, or if just everybody gets 10, and then depending on the type of bag you have and how many slots, but it's a very simple slot-based inventory. And then the bottom of our character sheet is social bonds and reputations, which is empty. Maybe that's just not for things. And then we have our allegiance, which is dark or bright. So maybe this is like this game's alignment type system. So we have 1 dark allegiance point and 1 bright allegiance point. And that puts us at the twilight, I guess, allegiance. Our gift is fangs. Retrieving an item, if it's from a backpack, it's 2 actions. And if it's from a traveler's bag, it's only 1 action. Wealth, 100 stones is 1 coin. 100 coins equals 1 gem. And then we have XP, including our current and total. So, and then here come the cheat sheets, which we're not going to get into. But, there's a lot of good stuff going on here. Ben, I tend to agree. This looks pretty gamist to me. All of this stuff here for the aptitudes looks very gamist with track bars and base values and, defining the, sort of descriptive text of what deafness is used for: dodging, sneaking, leaping, noticing, knowing, remembering, persuading, inspiring, terrifying. But then, this sort of very, zone-based movement, bonuses, lots of abilities that seem to have more, kind of gamist natures to them. Shield 1 person from 1 heart once per fight. As soon as something like that is like once per fight, shield them for this exact thing. I mean, that's a very gamist notion, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is a thing. All right. So let's go back to the beginning here real quick, and let's see if they say what this game is about. So Break is a tabletop role-playing game of exploration and adventure. Okay, and remember, we already kind of did a sneak preview because we looked at the thing, but one of the things I say is like, what is the game trying to do? And then does the game support what that says to be doing? Not like I'm trying to throw stones or anything like that, but there's a lot of RPGs out there that say, oh, we're a game about exploration and adventure. And then the game doesn't really support exploration and adventure, not in any sort of meaningful way. Set in the fantasy realm of Outer World, a place of wonder and peril. Okay, so the world is maybe predefined. It's kind of baked in. We got people giving hugs here. Outer World is broken. Most struggle to survive, huddling together in the ruins of the past. Will you protect or abandon them? Okay, so we're not presuming that our characters are heroes. And we did see that there's this bright points and dark points. So maybe it's okay to be evil or at least not necessarily good. Some pockets of civilization remain. Their leaders seek to shape the future. So we've got a broken world, pockets of civilization. Sounds very Points of Lightish, where you basically have a sort of a post-apocalyptic, and people automatically think Mad Max, but There's a lot of fantasy worlds that tend to be points of light that are not necessarily Mad Max, but they're this idea that civilization, a grand unifying civilization, doesn't exist, and that the world is mostly scary and full of dangerous places. Forgotten knowledge and lost treasures are rumored to have the power to change the status quo. Will you wield them wisely? Influential heroes and villains roam the land, leaving a wake of irrevocable change behind them. Will you survive long enough to become one of them? We've got some D20 rolls here on the left-hand side. Huh. They seem to be, because I'm looking at it, obviously, one page here. I wonder if these mean anything or if this is just like a random die generator. That's kind of cool. Anyways, doesn't seem to match anything going on here, but all right. All right. This is a role-playing game. I think we know what role-playing games here are. We don't really need to go into this. Okay, here we go. Gameplay. In Break, the players take on the role of adventurers, plucky souls that roam outer world in search of truth and treasure. As an adventurer, you will journey across shattered landscapes, explore the world's ancient ruins and wonders of the modern age, encounter and interact with outer world's many unusual inhabitants, negotiate or fight with monstrous or cunning adversaries, survive and endure outer world's many perils and challenges, craft items, magical and mechanical, create social bonds with friends you meet along the way, attempt to rise through the adventuring ranks to become a legend, and experience the wonder, humor, tragedy, and triumph of adventuring. Okay, so they seem to really be focused on, this kind of journeying, exploring, discovering creatures, fighting them, talking to them, crafting, meeting people, becoming a legend. Yeah. Inspiration. Break is a love letter to the worlds and themes depicted in manga, anime, and video games. Thanks you to all the creators that influenced us. So video games, we've got the Mana series, Final Fantasy series, Zelda series, the Crystallis series, the Saga series. I don't know Nier, but obviously these are some of the classic JRPGs. Animations, I'm not going to know any of these. Studio Ghibli, I'm only aware of in existence. Berserk, don't know it. Moribito, don't know it. The Tower of Duraga, don't know it. Sword Art Online, I've heard of that one, but don't know that. The Last Unicorn, I assume we're talking about the Rankin Bass one. Wizards, don't know that one. Classic Disney, okay, there we go. I knew one of those. Literature, we've got The Once and Future King and the Earthsea series, great. Should say the Earthsea Cycle, probably more appropriate. Other RPGs. Okay, this is a very weird list. Stormbringer First Edition, Made, Teenagers from Outer Space, and I've never even heard of Teenagers from Outer Space, and then Old School Hack. Old School Hack is, wow, that is a deep cut. If Old School Hack is what I'm thinking of. Old School Hack was like a game that was being made on like Google Plus back in the day, and it was like a hack of it was like during the early OSR. Like I'm talking like 2009, 2010. I used to play it at gaming conventions. Wow. That's crazy. I wonder if I have some of that stuff still. Anyways, it was cool. Old School Hack was really interesting. I've never heard somebody call out Old School Hack before. Anyways, and the blogosphere. All right. Let's take a look here. What if we're a gaming grognard? Okay, if we're already familiar with RPGs and gaming-related jargon, here's a quick system interview. Okay, Break only uses a D20. Okay. Ben says, Old School Hack was brand new when this game development started, lol. Okay, so it's been working on it for that long. Oh, wow, geez. Break only uses a D20, so it is D20 based, but it's only D20. Aptitudes, ability scores are not rolled, but are randomly, but are set by your class, which is your calling. Experience points are rewarded. Now, I'm curious. If you're designing a OSR, or if you're designing a game, and you can see here that this person is talking that they're calling them aptitudes, and then they clearly set them apart as ability scores because they want to tell people what they really are. And they say that they're not rolled randomly, but they're set by your calling. And then just so that we all know what we're talking about here, they're clearly aware that a calling is a class. Is there a reason, a good reason, other than I want to be different, to not just call them ability scores or to not just call them a class? Like, is the attempt here to distinguish yourself from, the 900-pound gorilla in the room because by just changing a name just to be different? I don't have a problem with it here, but it's one of those things where it's like, if you're describing what the thing is by describing the thing that you're trying not to make it, then it's kind of strange to me that you just choose a different name. I'm getting very caught up on that, but all right, Thaddeus, thank you again for the tip, and we'll take care. We'll get you on the VOD. All right, experience. Here we go. Experience points are awarded for rank, which is level. So why not just call it level? I mean, if it's based off of SNES, it's based off of JRPGs. Just call it level. Everyone's going to know what you want. I understand that as a game designer, like, people want to carve out something unique, but I sometimes wonder if if there's a, it's like it's like USB standards, like the classic thing, like, we need one standard to unite them all. Now there are 13 standards, right? The classic XKCD comic book. It's like, just everything should just be USB-C and we should all just be happy. All right. So it's a roll under for your aptitude checks, which is saving throws and skill checks. So we saw that the ability scores were like 7, 8, 10, 12, maybe we saw. So it looks like you're just rolling under them, which, to be clear, they call this a roll under aptitude system. But I mean, again, that was sort of the old school D&D. If you said make a strength check, there was no skill system. And so what you were doing essentially was just make a strength check meant roll a D20 and roll equal to or under your ability scores. So this is kind of an old school mechanic in that way. It is a point crawl overland travel system. Cool. I like that. I like point crawls. It is tactical turn-based combat. It's a roll over the enemy's defense rating, AC, to hit. Now, to be clear, this is an example of where I actually maybe prefer name change, because I think armor class is a terrible name that may not necessarily actually reflect what your thing is. So I think defense rating here might potentially even be better. But then the problem with defense rating, I'm going off on a tangent, is how, if you and I and everybody else were playing this game, what are we going to call defense rating? We're going to call it DR. And if I call something DR, what do you think it means? You're going to think it means damage reduction. So it's kind of interesting. Weapons do set, not random damage. Hearts, which are your hit points, reset after every fight. Lasting injuries occur after your hearts are depleted and need to be healed. It is a scenario, not a story-based adventure. And random encounters with mood rolls, aka a reaction table. And success is determined by the player's situational decision-making and calculated risk. Okay. Character creation. Now, again, we're not going to go into every element or detail of this, but we're going to kind of, because I do want to get to the main rules of the game and not just get caught up in the classes. But if we have time, we'll circle back. All right, adventures have a special affinity with mana, which enables them to attain magical or martial mastery that would normally require a lifetime of dedication. See, how do you say that and not say you were? No, I mean, maybe they just didn't. But how do you not say you were not influenced by, like, Earth Dawn? Because that's exactly what Earth Dawn does, basically. So we got some more anime type characters here. There are 6 steps to creating a character. It says it takes 15 minutes or less. You'll need a character sheet, the good old pencil and eraser, of course, and a 20-sided die. So here's the procedure. And maybe we'll just go through like this, right? Just to kind of, before digging into all this stuff. Step 1, we choose a calling. It determines the focus of your core abilities. Remember, our class or our calling determines our ability scores. It's not randomly generated. And therefore, what in-game strategies will work best for you. I actually really like the layout and design of this book. It's very clean. There's not a lot of wasted space, but it's not hard to look at. It's very well broken up. I like that this starts with this procedure that each box and area calls out what page you need to jump to. I mean, look, this character creation process spans from page 12 to page 148. So this layout is very nice. This summary, the header bars, the text layout, and then little sidebar callouts with the sort of, in-game characters. I love when creators do that and kind of talk to me and sort of say, hey, here's the rules, here's my commentary. And then on the right side, we have this kind of gutter. But it's hard to believe that you can do a 155-page character creation in 15 minutes. I agree. I've seen people who took longer than 15 minutes to make their Shadow Dark characters. And this was for a one shot. So yeah, anyways. So calling is our class. Species is our species, which gives us biological or psychological abilities. Step 3, choose your homeland and history. The life that you had before you become an adventurer provides you with specialist knowledge and a few useful starting items. Traits enable you to personalize your character's natural abilities, making them more or less strong, agile, resilient, or perceptive. So that's what we saw, I think, with those taglines on the ability scores. Those must be traits that then add or subtract from those base ability scores. Quirk is what makes you different from characters of a similar calling and species. It's an eccentricity that grants you a small advantage, but it is often accompanied by a minor catch. So kind of sounds like a aspect from Fate, right? Maybe it gives you an advantage, but maybe there's a disadvantage. And finally, name, appearance, and personality. At the end, at each creation step, you will be presented with many choices. There are 2 ways to make a decision: randomly roll with a die roll, or simply choose the option that you like the most. I know this is a minor thing, but I actually really like that. Number one, I know players who would just much rather roll. They don't want to make a decision, and they would just rather roll. Secondly, I know players who go, I think it's fun to just randomly roll and make a character as best as I can. Obviously, if I see something I really like, I can go ahead and pick it. But yeah. I suggest rolling first, but choosing when you get a result you don't like. I think that is great advice, and honestly, probably kind of the way I would probably make a character in this system. All right. So calling, and again, this is just, we're going to go over the summary here. Cool art there. Very shades of Zelda, I suppose. Your calling is what you were born to do, a combination of training and instinct. Were you destined to be a disciple of the sword or a master of magic? It determines your ability scores, aka aptitudes. It determines your combat values, your calling abilities, skills or powers unique to your specific calling. Note magic abilities are marked with an M. How you advance, and what gear you can use in combat. So you can either roll and then fill in the stuff. And our classes are the factotum. It's probably a skill user or something, or knowledge. The sneak, which is rogue, a champion, a raider, a battle princess, a murder princess, the sage, and the heretic. With a note that the callings are gender neutral. So there we go. Factotum. Let's just take a look at one of them. I mean, there's 2 of them, actually. Here we go. So the factotum, you elevate skills to an almost magical level. Your motto, be prepared. We can see our starting ability scores are 7, 9, 8, 9, 9. We get 0 to attack. We have 2 hearts, average speed, 10 defense. And we start with second to none, factotum pack, and don't mind me. And then the champion is a valiant fighter who focuses favors force and direct action. Why pick a lock when it can be knocked off its hinges? And again, look at this. This is just such a nice little touch. Oh, this interests you? Do you want to learn more? Do you want to know more? Then just jump to page 16. And this PDF appears to hyperlink this. Oh, very nicely done. That is a nice touch. That is a nice touch. All right. Service guarantees citizenship. Yes. So anyways, really nice layout. You're fitting 4 classes on a page. Very cool. The Battle Princess is a wielder of bright magic and a stalwart defender of things that we hold dear, and inspiration and motivation to all around us. And the Murder Princess is focusing their dark magic to obliterate the source of your hatred. There will be no clemency for those who oppose you. Arr. All right, so those are our callings. And we'll skip ahead because I'm not going to go through every single one of them here. And we're going to go to species. Outer world species has a different mental, social, and physical qualities. We would be a brawny grun or an ingenious goblin. We can roll on a d20. I like that human is the most common at 20%. We've got dimensional strays, of course. Chibi or Cheeb, a tenebrate, a Ray Neko, a Promethean, a Grun, a Goblin, a Dwarf, an Elf, and a Bio-mechanoid. At the risk of being uncharacteristic, I actually kind of like this list of species. For this kind of, when I think about like a Secret of Mana game or a Final Fantasy game, this feels, this feels appropriate to a certain extent. I'm going to guess that the Cheeb is the, yes, there we go. So human natives, we're from the human. Cheeb, you're diminutive, charming, and occasionally ruthless. It can be hard to get noticed sometimes, but you can use this to your advantage. So you're just basically a halfling. Dimensional Stray is your, God, you guys are going to tell me because I never remember because I don't know anime. The people who come here from another, they're like you in another world or whatever. That's the one. Thank you, people. Everybody knows this. Oh yes, Portal Fantasy. We've been talking about that a lot lately too, as well. But Isekai is the one I was definitely thinking of. So, which is fine, A tenebrate. You thrive in the profound darkness. Some believe people were human once, but were warped by a sunless existence. Yeah, Tama, that is interesting too, as we look at these characters. So, it determines your size. And how many base, so your size determines your base inventory slots. Looks like medium is just default, but like the Chibi or Cheeb is small, so they get lower might, higher deafness. They have a bonus to their defense rating, but they only have 8 base inventory slots. Everyone has 1 innate ability. I missed, what did the little exclamation point mean? I maybe missed that. And then the quirk table for each of the different races. Inheritor. Okay. Innate abilities, leisurely focused. All right, so the Tenebrate are sort of like our dark, twisted humans for like the edgelord people. There we go. There's our cat people, the Rai Neko. You're a cat-like being rumored to be from a place beyond the sky. A curious blend of natural athleticism and techno-savvy. You think it means you have to make an additional choice. Got it. Okay, great. Kind of letting us know, hey, there's more choices to make here. Grun. Ooh, we got a large species. You're large, brutish, and irrepressible. Your robust frame can soak up punishment, and your powerful limbs can dish it out. Okay, I like it. The big kind of ogre green skin Shrek people. What are you talking about? This thing totally looks like a Thundercat. Promethean, you're one of the chosen, a perfected being. Your immense physical presence intimidates the smaller folk of outer world. Oh, okay. Large-sized person. I don't know what the analog to this is. Goblins, another small species, small and impulsive, created for a dark necessity. Dwarves look like they're like literally made of stone and like kind of earth and grants. Maybe giants. Okay, maybe giants. Yeah. And then a bio-mechanoid. So we've got our Cosmos type character here. You are a relic of the past, neither human nor machine. Ooh, and then elf. Oh, come on. How do you not put one more race there? You're one of the ageless survivors of the dreaming, both hated and adored in equal measure. That's a deep cut. An Urda. That is a deep, deep, deep cut. Let's see here. Poll in chat. Do you know? All right. Pulled up in chat. Jonas, that was nice. And then we get into the details of the humans. That is quite the ball sack. Anyways, we got a lot of different people here on the page. Nice. You get different abilities here. This art is a little different than the art that we've seen so far. Kind of weird. Their other world is one of science and supermarkets, not one of swords and sorceries. All right. They have equated the sensation to a caffeine high, but others are not sure what this says. Okay, there's the chibi people. All right. And there's the tenebrits. Let's see here. I really like the notable differences between the species. It's very felt, and the complete opposite of modern trends. 5e Chiefs would be mechanically indistinguishable from Gruns. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to have different species, I want them to feel, look, act, and actually play differently, right? I'm actually very against the modern take now to basically make every ancestry the same. I think that's boring. I think why even have it then? I think it's boring. And that if that's the case, it should just be a description on your page, I guess, and mean nothing. I think it's, which is, I like having mechanical and notable differences between the different species. For sure. All right. All right. 88% of you did not know what an Urda is. All right. Love to see it. Urda were the high ogres, like the evolved high ogres from the world of Kryn, the world of Dragonlance, before they were struck down by the gods and cursed to become like unthinking, uncivilized brutes. They were called the Urda. Nice deep cut. All right, so that's our species. Homeland and history. Your homeland determines your language, or bonus language. It determines what you did, purviews, which are useful areas of knowledge earned from past experiences, and your starting gear. We can choose or roll on our homelands. And there we go. Let's see what purviews do. Purviews represent areas of expertise you have developed over the years. They are a combination of instinct, skill, and general know-how. You find things related to your purviews eager to accomplish. Anytime you make a check or contest that falls under one of your purviews, you can ask your GM for a minor bonus to your roll. Your GM will just +2. You'll sign with it. Now, what's interesting here is, isn't this a roll under system? If it's a roll under system, don't I not want a +2 bonus to my roll? Unless a check or a contest is versus a DC. But the game made it sound like everything outside of combat is a roll under system. So I don't know. That's a little confusing to me. Starting gear, and then we can roll. We can be from the Wistful Dark, the Twilight Meridian, the Blazing Garden. So it sounds like there's like a dark world, and then there's like a light world, and then in between there's like a twilight world, maybe like an overworld and an underworld or something. But I have to figure that out. Or maybe there's like a dark world. I don't know. Maybe there's like some sort of intergenerational thing. My assumption is you're adding it to your attribute roll to roll under. That's fine, although it's a little awkward, don't you think? Although it does seem strange to be like, you get a bonus, subtract 2. I could also understand how that's, very weird. Yeah, because there's sometimes where you're adding bonuses to your die roll in attacking, but then there's times where you're adding your bonus to your ability score when you're rolling under. Oh, interesting. But because there's Buried Kingdom. So clearly the Wistful Dark is not underground if a background can also be the Buried Kingdom. All right, I'm going to go with some sort of like, I don't know, part of the world perpetually shrouded in darkness or something. Okay. So yeah, information about your character, where you're from, all this other stuff. Pretty cool there. All right, traits. You modify your base aptitudes set by your calling. Your traits make you more or less capable, okay? Positive traits raise your ability scores, and negative traits reduce them. And again, we saw that, right, on the character sheet filled, right? So this character started with, as a battle princess, this character started with an 8 might, an 8 deafness, a 9 grit, but because they took the courageous trait, that raised their grit to 10. And then they started with a base of 7 insight, but they took the single-minded drawback or something or quirk, and that gave them a 6. And then they had a base 10 aura, but they took the charming trait, and that gave them an 11. That seems pretty reasonable. Positive and negative. Why do we have to rule them? Don't get hung up on the traits that you think you should have. A mighty warrior is fun, but a perceptive barbarian can be just as effective. I agree. That's fun. In fact, that's more fun to me, which is why it's cool that you can roll for it. So choose a roll in the positive trait table twice, and choose a roll in the negative trait table once. As you rise in rank, the aptitudes adjusted by your traits will now track permanently above or below the value stated for your calling. Okay. So there we go. So we can get bonuses to these things. Looks like it's fairly distributed. Negative as well. Quirk. A quirk is a unique or peculiar aspect of your character. Well, you have a robotic arm. Be resilient, unusually resilient to magic, or have great fashion sense. All right, folks. Everybody in chat, what is this? We've seen this mechanic before. It's a good mechanic. What is this mechanic? Come on, I want to see it in chat. I'm waiting for see it in chat. Sometimes it's called the out. Anybody? The out? Yeah, Tristan. There you go, buddy. It is the one unique thing. So this is from 13th Age. I actually think this is a great mechanic. It's very simple. It's very easy. It doesn't necessarily have to be mechanical. I just think having a one unique thing is pretty great. I mean, obviously it looks like they have mechanics for it or something like that, but that's fine. So quirk is a unique physical or mental trait that provides your character with some way, usually advantages and disadvantages. So they've mechanicized it, but that's okay. So you can be unhinged, jumpy, pedantic. These are, so for example, if we're jumpy, we are jittery, skittish, or paranoid. This means that while you spot potential danger sooner than most, your nervous outbursts can telegraph. So this is an out, but with mechanical takeouts. But what's interesting about this is that the out, these things seem to be sort of independent of your class, right? So it depends on whether you're in an inheritor, an old world, or a biomechanoid, which apparently only relates to the one species, which is the biomechanoid. And it looks like the inheritor species get to roll on the fate quirk only, and the old world, the elves, dwarves, and goblins get to roll on the eldritch quirk. I actually kind of like this. For whatever reason, this is like stimming a certain part of like my gamist simulationist brain a little bit. So anyways, now it says, now we get into some nomenclature, which we don't know. But it says your team gets edge on all insight rolls related to checking for danger. Your team suffers a snag on deafness rolls. Considering that this is D20, roll under, roll over, I'm assuming it means advantage and disadvantage, or boon and bane if we're talking dragon bane, but it remains to be seen. So it looks like, okay, they're not all the same. This one just gives you a +2 to your attack bonus and -1 to your defense rating, but this one is also pedantic, is edge and snag. Okay. Then we finish our details up. Describe our PC, use our coins, buy gear, blah, 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 blah. I mean, yeah, this could definitely be like a 90s era RPG manual or art or something like that. I completely agree with you there. We go shopping. We do all that. Then we get into the gear. We got, ooh, look, we got the Zenny. And remember, we know that the currency goes stones into coins into gems. We can buy gear prices, combat gear, all this stuff. Cheap local currency. Coins are made of precious metal, and gems are of the very wealthy. Medium have 10, small have 8, large have 12. Certain things can carry up to 3. Yada, yada. Weapon types. We have melee weapons and missile weapons. Melee and missile weapons are further broken down into groups that have similar performance during a fight. For example, a great axe and a warhammer are both mighty weapons. So each weapon type has additional rules. All weapons deal 1 heart of damage unless otherwise noted. A number that grants you an extra heart of damage if you succeed your attack roll total. Okay. You can use a weapon, but then you suffer a snag. So here we go. I mean, I'm a big fan. I don't like very like hyper specific weapons. I'm totally fine saying like, you know, big weapons, small weapons, you know, big two-handed weapons, reach weapons, and just, you know, play it like that, you know? So standard weapons are basically, you know, this could be a sword. It could be a mace, a simple warhammer. I'm just imagining it is just a normal weapon. And if you roll 20 or higher on your attack roll, you do an extra heart of damage. We know the standard damage is 1 heart. So this does 2 hearts. And we saw that some of the characters have like 2 and 3 heart hit points, I think. Like our starting character basically had, they had 3 hearts total. So, okay. And then let's compare that to a mighty weapon. When wielded one-handed, you have a minor penalty on attack rolls. Now, what's interesting is that a minor penalty gives you a penalty to your die roll. Interesting. Because it's an attack roll. And you do 2 hearts of damage instead of 1. And you do still do 1 more if you add 20 or higher. Quick weapons, arc weapons, master weapons, aka your katana, of course. And not only does this give you a bonus to hit, but you do your extra point of damage or crit, if you will, if you roll 18 or higher, which I like. We've got our like chain or whip-like weapons. And there you go. Look at that. Some examples of weapons. So that's a very simple, easy way to do weapons. They make them feel differently. I also will point out, I don't know what the scaling is on this game, but I like that the crit rules seem to kind of use a standard DC of just 20 or higher. So obviously it means that, bearing anything else in mind, if you roll a 20 or more, that, you know, you're going to crit most of the time. But it's interesting that it's 20 or higher. So like, it's not a nat 20, it's a, you know, whatever or higher. So, you know, a master weapon is going to, you know, be able to, not only is it more accurate, but you need an 18 or higher, but you're also more accurate. So if you're rolling with a +3 to attack roll, then if I'm reading this right, you crit on a 15 on the natural die roll, which is pretty cool. I like that idea. That's an interesting idea. Like, right, it's taking that kind of like static DC idea, but kind of applying it in an interesting way. So that part looks kind of interesting. This game looks interesting, but is totally not my thing. I'm so glad Final Fantasy XIV has ejected almost all of this stuff. Ben, if you want to be a little bit more detailed, I'd love to know specifically what you're thinking. You mean in terms of like the gear breakdown or like the narrative elements? I'm curious what you mean by, you obviously know Final Fantasy XIV a lot more than me. So I'm curious what you mean by what did they eject. I love the art for these weapons. This looks like this is coming out of a Dragon Warrior 4 book or something. Right, that's what I'm saying, Andrew, is that you're adding the total here. Wield me until you've earned another. Classic Link. Love it. Sweet. And I love the idea that, and the Dragon Buster sword. I love the idea too that, like, you know, they're just like, hey, roll a d20 if you don't know what kind of weapon that you're rolling, you know. And, you know, they don't want you to just write heavy weapon. Like, no, make your weapon cool. Describe it however you want. But mechanically, it's just going to function like every other heavy weapon, right? Which I like. Okay, so we got 28 different weapons as an example. Here are our missile weapons. We've got large guns, small guns, throwing weapons, bow and arrow, and that looks to be it. And then custom weapon abilities. This kind of reminds me of Fabula Ultima for sure. You can make a combination of weapons. So there's a lot of stuff here for customizing weapons. This definitely seems to be an area that they have spending a lot of time on. Compared to everything else that we've seen in the game, this has got a lot of different stuff in here. So then we have our armor, which increases our defense bonus and also gives us our max speed. So there we go, some armor examples. The Dreadnought Plate. The terrifying reputation of the warlords of the Shadowed Lands comes partly from their impenetrable armor. Now, I don't know anything about this game, but all I do know is that Warlords of the Shadowed Lands sounds awesome. The Grand Warrior of Soul, the Grand Warriors of Soul also sounds really cool. More custom armor abilities. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff here for the gear. Like, wow, a lot of stuff for the gear. By the way, we haven't even gotten into shields and wearable accessories. Including magical wayfinders, illuminators, books, consumables, curiosity artifacts and gadgets, companion creatures, pets, mounts, pack beasts, different types of followers, scamps, scholars, guide, custrels. These look straight out of Final Fantasy Tactics. Literally a chocobo. Not quite literally a chocobo, but it's pretty much a chocobo. Property. So you can buy housing, player housing. Okay, I'm picking up what they're putting down here. And then services. So that's a very long listed of stuff. It can't be Final Fantasy Tactics. He has a nose. All right, here we go. Night's Last Call. Final Fantasy 14. We're talking about not the MMO, but the tabletop role-playing game. Uses a streamlined chassis system based on your job role, ROLE, I meant. It is also D20 roll and D6 damage pools, but you don't roll to hit. You only roll for effect, and I'm out of space. Does it do save points? I don't know. Final Fantasy 14 does. We'll get into that. All right, rank is our level. You start at rank 1, you become rank 10, so Vin hates it because it only goes to level 10. The higher rank, the more powerful you become. Some of the satisfaction of playing Break comes from rising through the ranks. To become a legend, we use XP. Your GM awards these to you for playing the game and achieving specific goals or overcoming challenges. The PCs readily absorb mana, the magical energy that flows. This allows them to rapidly develop skills and powers that would take ordinary folk a lifetime to master. So basically the idea is that your characters, like in Earth Dawn, are literally, they're not, how did they gain all these abilities so quick? Well, they're apparently becoming magically supercharged beings. We're not hand waving it. It's trying to be diegetic with it. When you choose magic abilities that draw on bright or dark, you will start to form an allegiance, and the world and its inhabitants will start to look differently to you. That's kind of a neat idea. Gifts. If you're deepening your allegiance with the bright or the dark, you will eventually result in a gift, a physical alteration. And there, there's sort of a cool progression piece of art. Doop, doop, doop. In an anime video game JRPG, a squirrel girl armed with a knife is exactly as dangerous and damaging as the brute armed with a 1-ton maul. There's some truth to that, for sure. Yeah, so there's kind of like a weird, right? Maybe there's a little bit of a disconnect, right, between like the anime aesthetics and the kind of, old school, right? Like, maybe it's 13th Age. I think it's 13th Age, where like your damage is partially kind of tied to your class. And I think like rogues in 13th Age do like really high damage die. No matter what weapon they're using, like they could be using a dagger and like their weapon die is really high because, they're a dagger, they're a rogue. They're just brutal. I think it's 13th Age that does that. And the idea is that like, how to use the weapon, right? Like you're very dangerous with that. But then there's a lot of people, who have a problem with that. They're like, no, like it needs to be simulationist, right? Like the small weapon needs to do less damage, which always seemed kind of silly to me because like if I stab somebody with a dagger or if I hit them with an axe, I feel like most of the time the person's still going to be really messed up. I mean, obviously a big weapon like that is going to hurt more, but there's this weird element of simulationism that I think people actually don't understand because it's like, it's a weird form of simulationism because it's like in real life, it doesn't work that way either. Like, it's Dungeon World. You're right, Tristan. It's not 13th Age. It's Dungeon World. You are right. And yes, I love that mechanic in Dungeon World. You are absolutely right. It is totally Dungeon World. So it's like, it's weird because the simulationist crowd will be like, talking about like, oh, it's more realistic. And I go, not even really. Like even you're basing it off of the simulationism of D&D of the last 20, 30 years, which itself was flawed in a simulationist aspect. All right. Rank. You earn XPs for, this is important. This is how we advance. This is how we get our level. This is how we get our rank. It's what we want to do. All right, here we go. All right, XPs represent your character's personal growth. XPs are earned for effort, awarded for spending time playing the game. Okay, so it's like Legend of the Five Rings, right? You earn 1 XP per hour. And achievement. Hey, look at that. You receive 1 XP for effort for each hour spent actually playing. XP are awarded at the end of the session. Your GM also awards discretionary XP for achievement. All PCs are awarded equal achievement, even if they were not directly earning them. So you play a 4-hour session, you earn 4 XP, and maybe the GM says, oh, you know what, you guys defeated powerful foes, and I'm going to give you a bonus point. XP award is awarded varying from game to game. It all depends on the goals that you set with your GM. Real sim players want reach to matter and damage based on weapons to reflect reality, not D&D. The problem with real sim players is if we played real sim players, it would be like, or real sim games, it would be like, okay, you guys are in a battle. And it's like, okay, I draw my sword. And you're like, well, he has a spear, so he wins. You're like, no, but I'm a swordsman. No, but he wins. He has a spear, you have a sword, you lose. I remember there was like a YouTube video where like they had like, HEMA people. And like, I think like the spear person won like 48 or 49 out of the 50 like bouts that they had against the person. It was just like, yeah, they win. I don't know what to tell you. Like that's the real sim of it. And and it's like, no, okay, fine. Like, okay, he has a thing, and okay, well, he's in full plate armor. It does nothing. No, but I gotta, nope, it does nothing. It does nothing. Like if you really want to know how you kill him, you like wait till he's tired, and then you and your buddies all jump on him, and then you like take your hammer out, and then you like beat the dagger down through like one of the weak spots in like the plate until you can try to pierce it into it. Like nobody actually wants to play like that. Like I think people would be very disappointed if they saw real medieval combat. They'd be like, what? This is what it looks like? It's crazy. In fact, actually, I just saw something the other day. I don't remember where I saw it, but it was like the whole idea of a knight in shining armor is probably horribly anachronistic, because it's only because the historians, when they found the pieces of metal, of armor, they polished them and they cleaned them up. Apparently, it is the historical documents believe that the armor was painted. Not only did that help prevent rust, but it was also very important for color purposes. So you actually had like knights wearing blue and red and yellow armor that was painted, lacquered over their, their shining metal armor. And like the modern concept of like the gleaming steel armored knight is actually completely probably wrong. And they found like museum restoration pieces where it was polished, but then when they took it apart and they found places underneath where the people hadn't, it was painted. And exactly the same thing with white marble Greek statues. They were apparently painted gaudishly.
Benetip $25.
Hey, Ben.
Forgot to mention, the reason that FF14 is built on a chassis is so that you can hot swap your role and level for whatever the mission is. There is no linear progression and you are not solid into choosing a single role.
That is very interesting. There's no linear progression and you can just swap your role. Although I wonder if does that add like to come high level to the complexity of the game? But it's very interesting. I'm very interested to read this game, especially because I really didn't play Guild Wars and I really didn't play Final Fantasy. Like I played Final Fantasy 11, which I guess wasn't like that at all. So this whole like job swapping thing, very unusual to me, but it's very interesting. And I could definitely see that elements of designs and some of the stuff that Smith has done in his games over the years as well. But no linear progression is a very interesting idea, but rather being able to swap your role entirely in combat, it's crazy. That is crazy. Not to mention save points. But anyways, you just basically respec as you needed to. Right, pyramids were painted or at least capped in white limestone. They believe that for the most of their existence, the pyramids were actually gleaming white, and they didn't have a blocky appearance. They were apparently sloped and fitted. But yeah. Anyways, so achievement. You get different amount of XP if you're willing to do amazing, awesome, cool stuff. And so, maybe you're getting you'll be awarded 1 to 3 XP for each recognized achievement at the discretion of your GM. So discuss and agree with your GM how achievement XP will be awarded before you play, right? So tell your players the goals. If you do this, you get 2 XP. So it's kind of like a buffet of options to earn additional XP. All right, so if we start using magical abilities, we gain allegiance with the dark or the light. This can give us dark points, which start to make us glow with like angelical tattoos and green halos and a resonant voice and sprout feathers and have aesthetic consistency and scaled joints and elongation and third eye gems. And if we become evil, we get tiefling horns and tiefling eyes and tiefling tails and tiefling claws and tiefling hair and tiefling spikes. And very cool. Teeth. I don't know if these do anything, but yeah, I think they're just flavor. Oh, no, maybe not. If we accrue, there's a gifts table. Oh, maybe is this what it is? Oh, these are the gifts. Oh, a gift does not provide a PC with any benefits, but they encounter should be suitably referential. But those they encounter should be suitably reverential. Got it. Tundalus says, Final Fantasy XIV job swapping is a diamond tier mechanic. It is certainly a very unique way. And, obviously I can understand how it works for a video game, but it is very interesting to understand how it works from a fantasy standpoint of game. And let's be very clear about this. It is a very gamist mechanic, right? Like it throws any sort of sense of simulation or realism away, which is fine by me, but for some people it's a problem. All right, here we go. Playing the game. Just an hour in, we're finally through it. Okay, so that's making a character. They say that takes 15 minutes. The gear chapter alone seems like it would take me 20 minutes, but maybe once you know what you know. All right, so we get 2 to 4 players at best. A GM. There's only one GM. 20-sided. Know your rules. Get your paper. Get your pencils. Get your cheat sheets. A session is a block of time. An adventure is a period where it is a quest that you go on. A mission, a mystery can run over several. And a saga is our campaign. A saga can see the PCs advance from rank 1 to rank 10. Even at rank 10, a saga only needs to end if they feel like it has reached a reasonable conclusion. The GM begins with a short summary. We play. They engage in general play, see page 212, and use the appropriate focused rules when required. So it's basically, you're kind of like in exploration mode, and then when you need to use one of the subsection procedural sections, jump into it. And then we get experience points at the end of the session. Here we go. Look at that. That's everything we need to play. All right, general play. Most of the time, playing is a conversation between the players and the GMs, with each taking turns to speak and react to what the other is saying. Like any successful conversation, general play is dependent on listening and exchanging clear information. Basically, classic D&D 101 as prescribed by Powered by the Apocalypse games and described as the conversation. The DM describes stuff, what you see, what you feel, what you hear. The GM describes consequences to their actions or inactions. This is a great line of text. Your descriptions don't have to be poetic, but should provide enough useful information for your players to react. GM should get this tattooed across the inner eyelids. I agree with it. Players tell the GM how their PCs react. And well done. When describing your PC's actions, you can either role play by putting on a voice. That is not what role playing is, but whatever. You can either role play by putting on a voice, getting into character, and referring to your PC in the first person, or you can simply describe what your PC is doing. Communicate in whatever way feels comfortable. And that's the key. The key is just being able to communicate intention and being able to communicate clearly what your action is. Nothing else matters. Group conversations can be messy. Make sure you don't speak over each other, missing stuff. Large portions of play are run in general play, but when the PCs perform very specific activities like exploring or crafting, then we go to our focused rules. You can totally role play in third person. In fact, I think sometimes people role playing in third person are doing a better job of informing the group of their character's nature and existence more than people do when they're in first person. All right. An important thing is to track time. After the sun machine was sundered, the sky... Oh, okay. So the sun doesn't move across the day. Interesting. So it's like... That must be like the light. Like there must be a light side and dark side of the world because like the sun doesn't move. Like it's tidally locked or something. Or the sun machine doesn't move. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Strict time records must be kept. If any milieu where the campaign is to be treated seriously. There's a little bit of a strange dissonance going in here. I can feel some of the old school philosophy and elements, and I don't know that I fully feel like they are as intersecting with the other mechanics maybe as much. I don't know. It's just a gut reaction. Remember, it's not a review. It's just my initial take. Acknowledge the start of a new day is important, as passing of time depletes resources, rations, and recharges certain expended abilities. So, the fact that we're tracking arrows and rations, that we're tracking time so importantly, I mean, that's definitely more of an old school aesthetic. But I can't help but wonder if the nature of the classes, the traits, the quirks, the abilities pull us away from that. And there's an element of, like, is this the kind of campaign with the kind of characters where you're the battle princess, where you really want to be tracking rations? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know that battle princess is high on my list of things to play. But it is interesting. And then I'm not quite sure if it's gelling for me personally. And then if we need time, we can break it down into moment to moments. Actions are the smallest. It's about 10 seconds a time. Abilities and other short tasks your GM feels take more than a few seconds require you to use an action. They can only take one action per turn. So very simple, one action per turn. This is a series of turns. This is a series of actions taken as a group. You will decide what your order is. The group that takes their turn first is the one that triggered the time-critical situation. So all the PCs go, then all the GMs go, and then we repeat, and that's a round. So, this is like meant to be more in the realm of old school gritty fantasy anime, I think. Record of Lodoss War towards first. So Record of Lodoss War is the only anime that I like, just for the record. Now, I haven't seen every anime, so I can't say for sure that that's the only anime I would ever like. But of all the anime I've ever seen, in fact, the only anime I own, and because I know people don't consider Avatar anime, is Record of Lodoss War. So I love Record of Lodoss War very, very much. But you know, the chibi vibes and some of that stuff doesn't give me Lodoss War vibes. And also too, you know, I watched Lodoss War and, you know, they weren't worried about like rations. You know, Parn didn't have a backpack. You know what I mean? Like it was about heroic adventure and trying to save Lodoss, you know, from Emperor Beld and all that other stuff. So there's kind of maybe a little bit of a disconnect there, but I do love Record of Lodoss War. Going off of what Andrea said earlier, ration tracking is just kind of anathema to the SNES vibe. Immediately, my mind jumps to the item point rules for FU, which serve the system so well. And I tend to agree. For sure. I completely agree. If I ever had an anime waifu, I don't even know what the term is. If I ever had like an anime waifu crush, it was Deedlit. I mean, Deedlit was awesome. Lelia wasn't bad either. And what was I'll pass on Pyrotess, right? I'll pass on Pyrotess. That's the dark elf. I also don't like what's her name? She's the one that's the companion of Orson. It's like Shiri or something, or Shiri. I'm not a fan. All right. Although I didn't really like Parn myself, actually. I thought he was kind of just generic and boring. Gim was like my favorite character in like the entire series. And like my favorite anime moment is actually like when they go and confront Carla, the Grey Witch, who is Lelia. And that's such a cool scene and such a cool fight. Like, anyways, it's awesome. Anyways, okay, here we go. Sorry. Totally distracted by Record of Lodoss War. Break uses a 20-sided dice and you'll roll it in 4 different ways. Checks. The majority of dice rolls you make are checks. For these, you're trying to roll a target number or under to succeed. I'm going to jump ahead here. An ability or rule can prompt you to make a check. Your GM can tell you to make a check when you attempt a risky or challenging action where there is a consequence to failure. The GM will ask you to make a check when you're attempting to evade, endure, or resist an effect. So it's basically a skill check that there's something on the line, or it's like a saving throw. Checks are not required when there is time to make repeated attempts. You'll just succeed. Great. Taking 20 is a thing here. Checks are not possible for tasks that your GM deals impossible. An aptitude for your check is selected. The aptitude you use is described in the ability or rule you are using, or if unspecified, your GM will choose one appropriate to the solution. AKA, sure, make this check, or make a might check, or make a aura check. Your GM will declare any discretionary bonuses or penalties that apply to the roll. Roll a d20. Apply any bonuses, penalties, snags, or edges to determine the final result. Determine the outcome. If the result of your roll is equal or lower than the selected aptitude score, you succeed. The consequence of success or failure will be described in the ability, or if it's not, it will be decided by your GM. If your unmodified roll matches the selected aptitude score exactly, you achieve a special success. So we still have a 5% chance of basically critting. And a nat 20 is basically, right, because this is roll low. Now that's interesting because this is making it sound like we really do just add these bonuses to the roll. And if we're doing that, isn't this bad for us? Isn't that going to make us less likely to roll under, equal to, or under this trait value? Seems kind of crazy. Also, yeah, I don't know. Also, we have some. At best, our character has a 50% chance, and that's only with one stat, which is aura. That's pretty rough. Oh, here we go. We missed this. All right, let's keep going here. Bonuses and penalties represent positive and negative factors that influence your chance of success. They are applied to your roll because an ability, a rule, or at the discretion of your GM. There are 2 levels of bonus. A minor bonus +2 positively affects the result of your roll by 2. A major bonus positively affects the results of your roll by 4. Ooh, yeah, here it is. Note, a bonus will add to the roll result when you're trying to roll high, but subtract from result when you're trying to roll low. Okay. I hate that. That is weird and unnecessarily confusing. The fact that it's even written as a bonus when in the majority of the game you are going to be trying to roll low means that the majority of the time you're going to be subtracting major bonuses from your D20 roll. That is very confusing. And the fact that half the time that you're not rolling it as a check, you're rolling it in combat where you're trying to roll high, and then you have to remember to swap those. The fact that then the penalties in combat become negative, but the penalties outside of combat are bonuses. That is very confusing, and that is not great. That is not great. That's not great. I don't know what to say other than that's not great. I mean, this is the downside, right, of trying to have your cake and eat it too. Okay, let's use Dragonbane, right? Where Dragonbane, it's a skill-based system and you have to roll low. You always have to roll low. Like, there's never a situation where you're trying to roll low and roll high. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just always the same. I got some people here in chat. Let's see here. Anon says you should have just had criticals be nat 1 instead of using a more complicated yet exactly equivalent rule. Anon, that is so right. So in Dragonbane, a nat 20 is a demon because, right, it's roll low. But a nat 1, Anon, I know why they did that. Because sometimes you want to roll a 20 and sometimes you want to roll a 1, right? Depends on whether you're rolling a check or you're rolling a combat check. If you're rolling something in combat, you actually want to roll high. And if you're rolling outside of combat, then you want to roll low. That is true, Michael, but that's not actually like a check in the game, right? That's a unique thing that you do at the end of the session during the very specific, moment. But you are right, Michael. You are right. You do want to roll high when you're rolling your improvements at the end of the session. Right. The roll type determines the value of a 1 or a 20. If we are outside of combat, a nat 1 is great. But inside of combat, a nat 1 is a miss. Oh, it all seems very unnecessary. I completely agree. Tristan says that's confusing. Tundala says that is not the solution. We're back to Thaco, kinda. Not very elegant. So we have both roll high and roll low, but also both modified and unmodified crits. And before that gets any more confusing, the game has advantages and disadvantages. They're called edges and snags. But unlike Dragonbane, where if you have boons, you roll an additional d20 for each boon, and you take the low. And if you have banes, you roll an additional d20 and take the high. Here, you have to use the more favorable result Because in combat, you're going to be rolling edges and taking the high roll. But outside of combat, if you have an edge, you're going to roll multiple d20 and take the low, after which you are going to subtract your positive benefit. That's not great. It's not great. All right, let's read this a little bit more. Penalties. Okay, we know this. Okay, here we go. A penalty will subtract from the rolled result when you're trying to roll high, but will add to the result when you're trying to roll low. That just sounds horrible. Even reading it, it sounds horrible. You can only benefit from one bonus per roll. A major bonus is used over a minor bonus. So if you have 4 minor bonuses, it sounds like you only get 1 minor bonus. And if you have a bunch of minor bonuses and a major bonus, you only get the major bonus. You can only suffer from 1 penalty per roll. A major penalty is used over a minor penalty. If both a bonus and a penalty of the same level apply to your roll, they cancel each other out. A major bonus is reduced to a minor bonus if opposed by a minor penalty, and a major penalty is similarly reduced when set against a minor bonus. So now we have offsetting bonuses, offsetting penalties, which have reversing changes in their die value depending on whether we're in combat or not. And I shouldn't even say in combat. We're in a situation where we need to roll high. So far, the only place where we think that we need to do that is inside of combat where you're rolling against defense. And then we get into advantage and disadvantage. And again, we can only benefit from 1 edge per roll. We can only suffer from 1 snag per roll. And if both an edge and a snag apply, they cancel each other out. So this is like the classic 5e thing where if you have 5 sources of advantage, you only get it once. And if you have 5 sources of edge and 1 source of snag, it sounds like they completely cancel that out. And for those of you who don't know, Dragonbane uses advantage and disadvantage. It's called boons and banes. And in Dragonbane, they just keep stacking. If you have 3 boons, you get to roll 3 extra d20s and take the best result out of the 4 dice that you're rolling. They just keep, and if you have 5 boons and 2 banes, then you just take 5 boons minus 2 banes and you're left with 3 boons. And so it's just, they keep adding up. The nice thing about boons and banes is at a certain point, it's a diminishing return. That's the thing that nobody seems to understand. Once you get the 2nd or 3rd advantage, the 4th or 5th advantage is adding very little to the chance that you're going to succeed because it's already so high. This is a tough page, folks. I'm not going to lie. This is a tough page. This is a tough page. For me personally, it's a tough page. Now, Ikemo says, not quite. 5e is worse. 1 advantage plus 2 disadvantages is a flat roll. Here it would still be a snag because they cancel 1 for 1. I don't see anywhere where it says they cancel 1 for 1. Because Ikemos, if I'm reading this in order, it says if you have an edge, roll twice. If you have a snag, roll twice. Then it says you can only benefit from 1 edge per roll. So if I have 4 edges to this roll, I'm only going to benefit from 1 of them. And then if I'm suffering from 1 snag, I can only penalize for 1 of them. So I have 1 edge, 1 snag. And if both an edge and snag apply to your roll, they cancel each other out. That's how I'm reading it. And even then, the fact that we're having this disagreement, Ikemos, not great that we don't necessarily know if these cancel. So, no, I mean, you might be right. I don't know. I'm reading it kind of very procedurally, like kind of like legalese, but I don't know, maybe, I don't know. Meanwhile, not only do the bonuses and penalties offset, but you can only offset 1 of them. And so you could be in a situation, if I'm reading this right, but you could have like a major bonus of +4, and then you could have 10 minor penalties. The minor penalty would only count once. It would cancel the major bonuses from +4 down to +2, and then you would subtract 2 because our total is +2. Oh, people would definitely get used to it. We get used to all these things. But nowadays, when you're coming out with a game like this, you have to you have to give people a reason to want to switch, you know? Like you can't afford any bumps in the road, you know? Okay, focused rules. This is when the rules come in, right? Because before that, we were just in that conversational style of play, that general play. But we can use checks and contests when we want to use our feat of skill or strength or bravery. We can use journey when we're navigating across the outer world. We can use the explore rules when we enter dangerous locations and determine what you encounter there. I love this art. Negotiate is when you want to attempt to influence a GM's actions, a GM PCs or GM characters, I guess, actions or thoughts. Fight rules are when you want to engage in combat. Peril rules are used when you're exposed to things like burning, falling, and drowning. Downtime is when you want to do something productive between adventures, and crafting rules are used when you want to create something with your crafting ability. So checks and contests, very, very cool art here. You'll make a check. How to make a check, when to make a check. We'll use linked contests for prolonged competitions like chases. So some sort of clock system would be my guess. And what does a special success mean? Remember, a special success is when you roll exactly your aptitude. So here's some examples of when you would roll might or deafness or grit or insight or aura. And sometimes, for example, it's a versus check. To make a check, you must use an appropriate aptitude, if not explicitly specified in the ruler of ability. And sometimes you can have people, you know, insight versus might for brains versus brawn, you know. If you can think of a good way to use your highest aptitude for a check or contest, tell your GM. For example, if someone is using might to wrestle to the ground, you could oppose them with might. However, you might have a better chance of success using deafness to wiggle out of their group. Now, it's interesting. I wonder how they're going to do versus checks because it doesn't use a DC system. Here we go. A check. The GM rolls it, you roll it, you make the roll, you declare any bonuses or penalties, and then you reverse their sign because a bonus becomes a penalty and a penalty becomes a bonus. And then you determine your edges and snags. And if the result of your roll is lower than your aptitude score, you succeed. If it meets it exactly, you get special success. If you roll a 20, nat 20, you automatically fail. Now, a contest is when we have opposing people. All right, both sides make a check. The aptitude, so the GM is rolling. The aptitude each contestant uses is described in the ability or the rule that you're using, or the GM will choose something like might versus might, say, for a wrestling check. However, in a contest, a bonus might add or subtract from the rolled result depending on what provides the most favorable result. So it's not even clear right off the bat which one it's going to be which one we're going to be using here. You do not have to use the full amount offered by the bonus if it will nudge you into failure, just enough to secure success. Well, a penalty might add or subtract from the roll depending on what provides the least favorable result. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Okay, because this is a classic example, right? Because when you're having a roll under system, when two people contest, who wins? So here we go. A contestant wins if they make their check and their opponent does not make their check. That part is very clear, right? Let's say your might is 9 and my might is 11. You roll a 12, so you failed your check, and I roll a 5, so I passed my check. So obviously I win. That part's easy. But in the event that both sides make or fail their check, then the winner is decided using the following. If someone gets a special success, they win over a standard success. If both or neither parties have special success, then a contestant who had an edge wins. If both have an edge or neither have an edge, then the contestant with the largest bonus wins. If both have a bonus, then the contestant with the largest penalty loses. Then, and by the way, these were win, win, win. Now it reverses. If you have the larger penalty, it's the lowest. And then finally, the contestant with the highest natural roll wins. Even though we're trying to roll low. Which is why it says we don't have to use the full bonus. Wow. That's horrible. This is handled for every opposed. This is every opposed roll. This is every contest. This is not for epic school duels. This is the game basics. The two core things of the game are checks and contests. I don't want to this is so clunky. It's 2025. We have elegant RPG systems. We have cool mechanics, often player facing. So GMs don't need to roll. They can focus on thinking and describing and thinking about consequences. I tend to agree. Right. Well, you're not rolling low. You're rolling as close to your aptitude as possible. Right. Except Ikemos, your bonuses give you penalties to make your roll lower. So do you understand why that's weird, right? Because like it so that's where oh my God. So yes, so in this case, your bonus is hurting you because your positive bonus becomes a penalty. And then in this one specific instance, it becomes a blackjack mechanic, Tundalis, in this specific instance. But it's a blackjack mechanic in a system that isn't a simple skill under system because there's no margin of success or margin of failure. And that's why we do not have to use the full amount offered by our bonus if it will nudge you into failure just enough to secure success. So, yeah. And if you have more than one PC wanting to get involved in a contest, I don't even know what would happen. The universe would explode. This is not a good rule. I think this is clunky and awkward and yeah. I mean, number one, this is why I don't like opposed rolls kind of in general, especially in roll under situations. So there's that. Okay. Because inevitably they start getting into some weird subtraction shit, and then you're measuring the margin of success, and it's just like a whole weird thing. And it's like, why not just use a bonus at that point? Yeah. Well, that's not great. So there's also a linked contest. So I think Super Princess got it right. If your ability is 11, your not your ability, it's not an ability score, it's a aptitude. Get it right. If your aptitude is 11, then you want to roll 11. After that, 1 is best. Ascending from there, unless you tie, and then you want a 10. You got it right. I think you're right. I think you're right. I think you got it right. Now here comes Beowulf, who plays Pendragon, which is, a clunky versus game with dice rolls. And he's going to come in here and go, you're not getting it. Not to mention, we're going through mods, edges, advantage, disadvantage, advantage. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. Sometimes they cancel, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they reverse sign, sometimes they don't. Sometimes we take the full bonus, sometimes we don't, if it would hurt us. Like, No, okay, because you have to follow the procedural layers right through. Because if I was thinking for a weird situation, but I think if you follow their flow chart, I don't think this would happen. But like, window capture. Here we go. Like I was thinking for a moment, like if you're in a situation, right, where like. Okay, like if you were in a situation where like, okay, the PC, right, your aptitude is 12, and you rolled on the D20, right, a 10, okay, and then the NPC had an aptitude of like 13, right? And they rolled a 12 on the D20. Okay. So you both passed the check. Okay. But in this case, if your character had a penalty to their die roll, which would actually be a which would be a negative, but would actually become a positive in this instance, right? Our 10 would get modified from a 10 to a 12 because it's bad. But in this case, we've now equaled our aptitude. So would that become good? Because now we've exactly hit our aptitude with our penalty, which is a bonus. Right? Very strange. I don't quite pretend. Sometimes we roll a D20 and sometimes we roll a 20-sided die. Is the dislike of opposed rules only for roll under? What about dice pools? Well, Phil, number one, predominantly for roll under. I don't like opposed rolls. I don't like it in I don't like it in Call of Cthulhu. I don't like it in BRP. I don't like it in Pendragon. I don't like it in Against the Dark Master. I don't really like it even presumably in the Broken Empire, which is coming out for Me, Myself, and I. I just don't like it. But number two, I really don't like it. So I don't like it for that specifically. But in general, I don't like it. Only because as a GM, I don't want to roll dice. I certainly don't want to roll that many dice. Like me rolling a dice pool is fundamentally the same as me just telling you what the DC is, right? I mean, it's kind of uninteresting what I'm rolling. That's my main take on it. That's my main takeaway. What if both scores equal the aptitude? Well, if both scores, George, equal the aptitude, then whoever rolled the natural roll the highest wins. And if both of those rolls are the same, then it's a stalemate and nothing happened. I'm not going to lie. You know what used to get a lot of flack back in the day, in my personal opinion, was the grappling rules from D&D 3rd edition. And I got to be honest with you, this feels like I'm playing D&D 3rd edition here. All right. So let's see here. If looking at your natural die result isn't enough to know whether you should be happy or sad, then your resolution mechanic is too clunky. I tend to agree. So you can sometimes have a linked contest where you're going to go for multiple rounds. One side emerges victorious by winning 2 contests in a row, or if they win a special success. A linked contest. So what this means is that there is a situation where you have to win twice in a row. Right. So you could win and then they could win and then you could win and then I could win and then you could win and then I could win and then you could win and no one will ever win until someone wins 2 in a row, or if someone rolls special success, or if someone just gives up. Oh, look at that. I was going to say, it's like tennis at deuce. And there you go. It works like deuce in a tennis match. Here we go. For example, you decide a sneak needs to win a linked contest to escape a burly town guard. In round 1, the lithe sneak uses their deftness to weave through the busy crowd, and the bulky guard uses might to barge bystanders aside. The checks for their chosen aptitudes are made. Both succeed, but the sneak gets the highest result and wins the first contest. Okay. And now to be clear, I don't know what just happened there. In that circumstance, and I don't know how people feel about this, but like, I don't know how people feel about this, but like, if your character had a really low score aptitude, but you rolled high, but the other person had like an 18 aptitude. Okay. So the only way they fail is if they roll a 19 or 20, but they happen to roll a 2. So they passed, obviously, but the other person whose aptitude was 6, okay, or 5, their aptitude was 5, they rolled a 4. They beat you. Just FYI. So anyways, that's that. They won the first one. Then at the start of round 2, you describe the sneak pulling away and decide that they reach a noisy market where there are many large pots and pans. The sneak decides to dive into a pot. This is now a combination between the sneak's deafness and the guard's insight. If the sneak wins a second time, the evade is over. However, if they don't, then they have to keep going. What is wrong with that? I just don't like that. I think that's I mean, specifically about what I was just describing about the person with a 6 rolling a 4, beating the person with an 18 who rolled a 2. I just don't like it. Because rolling low should be good or bad. It shouldn't be both. Special success. So when we get a special success, we achieve what we wanted, but we overachieve. We discuss with our GM and decide something beneficial. Okay, so it's kind of more narrative fluff and hoo-ha, which is fine. All right. Well, that was a rough. I mean, they call that a special resolution section. That was kind of rough. So let's. I mean, the art's gorgeous. Even I'm not an anime fan. I think this art is gorgeous. All right, let's take a look at the journey rules. So we'll use these whenever we move between settlements with a capital S or adventure sites. So we have this idea of settlements and action sites, and we'll use journey rules along the way. They reinforce the scale of the outer world. They cover procedures for navigating across large areas, including getting lost and having random encounters, how to calculate a day's travel through terrain types, very simulation stuff here with kind of being point crawly. The effects of rushing to your destination without food or rest. So yeah, Karama, I mean, it's a blackjack system where you want to roll as high as possible, but under your ability score. Where it gets weird, right, is that getting a bonus to your D20 roll when you're trying to roll under is a penalty, right? Like, let's say you have some huge advantage. So you get a -4 to your D20 roll, which is good because you're trying to roll low. But you're not always trying to roll low. Sometimes you're trying to roll low, but not too low, right? So, because you want to roll equal. So it basically is like the way the penalty works is that, or the way that like the bonus, which is a penalty because you're taking a subtraction, or I should say in this case, the bonus is a subtraction, is you get up to -4 and you don't have to take it. Yes, the bonus can modify. So here's the thing. The bonus can go up or down, your choice, and you can take as much of it as you want, because if you take too much, then it's bad for you. And that's just clunky as shit. And it absolutely should just be on the attribute value. 100 trillion million %. Or just not even be in the game. But yes, it should. That solves all the issues, Super Princess. Anyways. All right. Yes, the bonus is not set in stone. Yes. Yes, the bonus, the banality, and I'm not even going to finish. Yes. The penus. Putting it on the attribute is what Pendragon does. Well, at least they did it smart, Beowulf. I still don't love the mechanic, Beowulf. I still don't love it, but at least they did that. So, anyways. Journey rules. Show the GM where you want to go. Work out a date. You assign a scout. All right. Kill, one shot, play for life. Ryutama, Chubos, or this. Oh, it's like this is like the new fuck, marry, kill, huh? Oh, that's tough. Oh man, that's tough. Well, okay, I'm not killing this because at the end of the day, this is still like a reasonable RPG for me. I have to play it for life. All right, I'm killing Chubos. I'm killing Chubos. I guess my temptation is to say kill Chubos, one shot Ryutama, play break for life. But the Ryujin is like so horrible. But these mechanics are so clunky. I'm gonna have to play break for life, and I'm gonna have to one shot Ryutama, and I'm gonna have to kill Chubos. So, I don't know. I would probably just house rule and say that you just modify the ability, and then I would somehow figure out a way to just make combat work by rolling under or something. I don't know what I would do, but it would, anyways. Okay, so here's our journey procedure. We pick a spot on the map, and then we can assign a scout. Then we work out a day's travel on the scale. If we have a mount or vehicle, we can double our distance. Check to see if we get lost. Following a path requires a guide or navigation tools. Without them, we'll get lost. Trailblazing requires your guide to make an insight check. Otherwise, we get lost. If we got lost, find out how badly by rolling on the lost table. You end up crash landed, Oceanic 815 on a strange island. Polar bears are here. Step 4, see what happens on your travels. Describe the environment and whether you have to contend with harmful terrain effects. And your GM makes an encounter roll to see if you encounter anything that day. Choose if you want to camp at the end of the day's travel or if you want to rush. And then deal with the consequences or plan your next day of travel and repeat back to step 1. When describing a day's travel, use the environment to describe the creative move. This is great, like for like the first day. But like imagine doing this for like a 5-day journey. Don't you think that would get boring? I think it would get boring. That's just me. Maybe I'm just like, I'm all for like having some mechanics around traveling, but like we did this in Forbidden Lands, and I'm not going to lie, it was pretty boring. You know, it's pretty boring. Like it was great, like the first hex that you traveled for the day or whatever, you know, the first day of travel. But then when you realize you're like, we have to do this like 3 more times or 4 more times or 5 more times, you're like, man, this is just endless dice rolling and endless. It's just like, blah. Like for what? I didn't come here to just like sit there and roll on random tables. Yes, undertake a perilous journey is a good move. Okay. An adventure map provided by your GM shows you the explorable world around you. Marked on the terrain will be important on the map will be important destinations you can visit or explore the local terrain if there are any established things. So on our map, we're going to have settlements, ports, adventure sites connected by paths, roads, and waterways. So it's, again, very, very gamist here. A lot of very gamey concepts here. I don't hate it. This is okay. Here we go. So traveling from the port to the town is along a road. You can double the distance you can cover in a day. Navigation tools and a guide are not required on a road, but if we want to go from the town to the village, it's 3 days travel, and half of it goes through difficult terrain. And if we want to travel from the village to the ruins, it's along a path, and that's a 4-day journey. That's a lot. So moving half speed. Sometimes you got to trailblaze. You have to make checks. I don't know that this sounds like, it just sounds like a lot of dice rolling. I don't see like a lot of decision points being made here, you know. You're just kind of picking a point and then rolling a bunch of dice. Very gamey, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's like, for what? And then if for whatever reason one of these paths fails or checks fails, or if we don't have a guide, or if we trailblaze, then we roll and we either get lost on a missteps, we take a wrong turn, or we go full circle and go back to where we started and we make no progress. So this is like the same thing with the contestants, right? It's like, make the check. You roll 17 or 20. Great. You made no forward progress. You're back where you were before, and now you just have to do that thing again tomorrow. I mean, obviously there might be some encounters, and obviously there might be some other stuff. And I should point out that part of the reason, sidebar, part of the reason that Overland, I'll just leave my blue screen up, whatever. Part of the reason that Overland travel was exciting or interesting in original D&D, it's not because the mechanics were particularly exciting or interesting. They weren't. It was exciting because it was dangerous and it was deadly and you were legitimately nervous. And, you know, I've always said this before, that casino games, you know, the ones at Las Vegas and the like, are very boring if you think about it. In fact, there's an old saying, right? Like it's boring, like, you know, playing blackjack or poker, you know, with fake chips. You don't really care. You're just betting to bet, you know, you're wasting time. Right? Poker is a boring game. You know, craps is a boring game. Roll number until you roll low or high before you roll a 7. You know, it's very boring. If that was a D&D mechanic, it'd be very boring. What thing that makes it exciting is you have $100 on that roll. You know, there's money at stake. You know, we theoretically care about money. There's a reason why these rich people don't play for $10, because that would be like me playing for a nickel. I don't care if I win or if I lose. So this boring dice roll becomes really exciting because there's money on the line, right? Because there's something to win and something to lose. And studies have shown time and time again is people are more afraid of losing than they are excited about winning, right? So losing motivates us more than winning. And so it's weird. It's kind of counterintuitive, but one of the things that's kind of interesting about casino gambling, at least for healthy gamblers, I suppose, if you want to call it, like me, is I'm voluntarily putting my own money at risk. And that's the part that's exciting for me. It's not that I'm excited about winning my money. I'm now excited about not losing my money, even though I voluntarily put my money at risk. Anyways, the thing about old school D&D is the procedure was very boring. You move from hex to hex. The GM would roll random encounter rolls. But like those things were high stakes, and you were legitimately curious, you know, am I going to make it there? Am I going to get killed? Like, are we going to be destroyed before we ever get there? And, you know, you weren't playing for money. You were playing with your fake character's life, but at least that's worth something, right? And something that you might be legitimately concerned about. So I think that's something that a lot of these games sometimes miss, right? Which is, you know, the stakes have to be real in order for the gameplay to be exciting. These journey procedure rules strike me as a misread of old school travel. And yeah, that's kind of what I was just saying in a certain way. Because, and again, it depends. I don't know how deadly this game is, but you know, correct. It is hard without judging how all the interlocking pieces, which is why I never call this a review. You know, it's just my first look, and it's just, you know, reading it back for me. Well, we know that when you don't die at 0 hearts, we know that from the beginning of the game. All right, so if there's map encounters, if you have a scout, you get to make a stealth roll. There's camping, which requires foraging rolls and hunting rolls. This is very much like Forbidden Lands. And I just played Forbidden Lands an entire campaign last year. And let me tell you something, it got boring really quick. It really did. You know, it was like bushcraft, or whatever it is called in Forbidden Lands. And it was like, I go hunting. It was not exciting. You know, it was cool like the first session, maybe. And then it quickly became more of a hassle than anything else. I love this art a lot. I don't know if I love this dwarf art, but I like this art. Although all right. Travel in Forbidden Lands is so boring. Yes, it is. I mean, I played it and I wanted to love it and I did not. Like I like parts of the game, don't get me wrong, but the travel was not one of them. All right. It's 9 o'clock. Ooh, we're cracking into the white monster. All right. So that was our overland exploration, overland travel rules. What about when we get to an adventure site? What are the exploration rules like? And this is whenever we're moving through an adventure site, which is actually the same language that Forbidden Lands uses, or an unpredictable area or dangerous area. You use the explore rules. So step 1, decide where you enter the site. Choose an access point. See, very gamist language here. Choose an access point to enter the adventure site. Set up your exploration team and assign your PC positions to Vanguard, Observer, Rearguard, or Scout. Choose a movement type: cautious, stealthy, hasty. I mean, this is, again, very gamey, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but oftentimes loses some of the luster, in my opinion. Then move to a location. If you're using stealthy movement, make the required insight and deafness checks. Discover what's at the locations. Your GM will alert you to any visible guardian encounters. Choose your location actions. It sounds like a Dungeon World move, right? Use a location move, I think is what they're called in Dungeon World. Once any immediate challenges and encounters have been dealt with, you must decide whether to inspect, with a capital I, your location, linger, with a capital L, or move to a different location. If you inspect or linger, your GM will check to see if you have a wandering encounter. If you are not choosing an access point to leave the adventure, return to step 2. So very procedural, but very gamist. You know, again, old school D&D procedural, but not quite that gamist, you know, like obviously you were, you know, saying, hey, you're in the rear, you know, of your marching order. Like people chose a marching order, but it wasn't this kind of like assigning people to unique and specific positions and, you know, specifically choosing one of 3 different movement type modes. But this is, you know, this is basic point crawl stuff, right? How are you moving fast? Are you moving slow? Are you moving stealthy? Are you moving quick? You know, who's watching out? Who's in the front? Who's in the rear? So access points are how you get into the GM or to the building. You don't have to rely on obvious access points. You can try to come in. And here's an example of the Grim Wing Roost, which is an abandoned village located in the Twilight Meridian zone. We've got the Duskward Gate, which is our entry point, goes to the Bailey, which goes up to the clock tower and the nest, over to the town hall, windmill, cap, and grain store. So it's a basic point crawl. I will note that this point crawl, not very well jacquazed. It's kind of got a central hub here. They need to connect a couple more of these things, maybe the town hall, but I guess you have to go to the cap or something. I don't know. But I mean, it's fine. I like the art. It's a simple, basic point crawl. I mean, this dungeon layout or this adventure layout is probably already better than a lot of people's adventures, so that's fine. And here are PCs. They can be in the rear guard, the observer, the vanguard, or the scout. This determines if you can shield your allies from traps, if you can perform a tactical action, if something happens behind you, and then if you're a scout, you arrive first and can use a different movement type to the rest of the PCs. But if you get in trouble, it will take one turn before the other PCs get there to assist you. Okay. And we can move cautious. And if we move slowly, we will discover all of a location's hidden items, noteworthy details, traps, and guardian encounters. No checks required, but your noisy investigations telegraph your approach to the location's guardians, and they will have a turn to prepare. And while it will reveal a trap, the players still have to set it off. If you move quickly, you forfeit your rolls to be able to even notice hidden perils, and you get noticed. And then this is about moving stealthy and making checks. We get snags if anybody's on our team is wearing armor of a certain type, a position. Once we're there and we fight. So basically, when we arrive at a location, the way I look at it is when we arrive at a location, we have to deal with that location's immediate challenges, right? So the location might have a guardian encounter or some sort of immediate threat. Then after that threat is dealt with, we have three options. We can keep moving on, we can stay here for a while, or we can inspect. If we keep moving on, no random encounter, move to the next point on the point crawl. If we want to stay for a moment, such as, I don't know why, take a breather, it says, but I don't know what that really means, then they roll 2 random encounters. If we stay around to inspect the details, which will reveal all of that location's details, clues, and hidden items, then they get 1 wandering encounter. I'm assuming that taking a breather is something to get back all of your powers or abilities or something, maybe. So it's a game choice here. Okay, sights have 2 types of encounters, guardian and wandering. If you would come across an encounter, you'll either have to negotiate, fight, avoid, or otherwise pacify them. Guardian encounters, I see Ben in chat is talking about WildSea. WildSea does this really well. I haven't played WildSea yet, but it reads like it would run really well. No, I actually have gotten to the point in my life, Andrea, where, and again, I'm like I love dungeons. I love like the classic, design of dungeons and drawing stuff on graph paper and, drawing all the rooms and the corridors and stuff. But I've basically gotten to the point in my life where I don't have the time for that kind of gameplay anymore, where I'm playing every week 4, 5, 6 hours. And like, I have the time to sit there and have my players map everything out. And, they're, trust me, this is how a lot of my D&D went for a long time. Like, okay, it's like, all right, the door slowly opens, revealing a large chamber filled with pillars, and in the center, a large altar upon which 2 black candles sit in bronze sconces. The chamber is 50 feet wide, east to west, and 30 feet deep, south to north. 30 feet, it goes 30 feet from the door west before turning to the north. It goes 10 feet, and then there is a doorway leading westward. 10 more feet brings you to the corner. 40 feet over east from that corner, there is a passageway extending and leaving the room to the north. It's 10 more feet to the corner, and then down south to complete the rectangle. Like, that is how, I ran D&D for a long time because my players mapped, sometimes 2 of my players mapped. And that's the way we played. And that's the way I would describe things, and very common for me. I mean, again, I grew up playing D&D the way that, I don't know, Gary Gygax taught me to play D&D. Like, you know, I might describe it as like, there's a 70-foot, you know, a corridor stretches out to the limit of your torchlight. You can see 60 feet, maybe 70 feet down the corridor. It's 10 feet wide and extends south for the full 70 feet, after which it continues into darkness. 30 feet down, on the west side, there is a passageway leading deeper. At 50 feet down, there's another T section, this one heading eastward. You know, what do you do? And they're like, we head to the T section. And I go, all right, 10, 20, 30 feet. All right, you move down the corridor to the first T section. You can now see that the corridor that you were in just previously extend another 20 feet before ending at an oak door. Now that you're at the T section, turning to the west, you can see down this corridor. It's 30, you know, that's how my game sessions ran. I thought it was awesome. My players all thought it was awesome. There's a part of me that still thinks it's awesome, but I don't have the time for that anymore, you know? And you know, and you know, when you have a bunch of interested players and they're all sitting around the table and they're watching the person draw the map, like it's cool, it's interesting, it's exciting. And then like you're excited to draw this map. But nowadays people are not, you know, not there. Anyways. All right. So this is okay stuff. Families of monsters. They don't always have to be bad guys, obviously. We've got a negotiate system here. Whenever you want to convince a NPC to act against their better judgment or do something that they wouldn't do. What these rules cover: choosing the best negotiator, defining an objective, setting a tactic, info. So it's gamifying talking to NPCs in a negotiation. So we determine the party. The GM decides the characters involved into opposing teams. Each team assigns a primary negotiator. These characters make the rolls. PCs are immune to being affected by negotiation. The players are always in control of their thoughts and emotions. I'm not going to lie. As soon as you give me a negotiation procedure and you make the PCs immune, I'm not interested in it. I'm not interested in it. If you're going to gamify negotiation, then by God, it's got to run both ways. I am a hard. This is my hot take. Burning Wheel and its descendants do this, and they do it well. Which is that, you know, if you're entering into a duel of wits, or if you're entering into a negotiation, then you as the players are putting your PC's thoughts and opinions at risk. Now, here's the thing. Are you saying, Derek, no, if you're going to do this, then if you're going to let the players decide, you know, what they do, then just don't use mechanics. Just talk it out and let the PCs and the players play their characters that they would play. And if somebody hears something that they think would change their character's opinion, then they can play that out and they can change their character's opinion. And you don't need dice to do this part of the game. You don't. And the player can make a decision. I'm okay with that. It's not my favorite, but it's totally acceptable. And in fact, I've done that many times over the course of my life, you know, where it's just my PC is you know, I'm playing them and I go, yeah, that's, you know, the GM as the NPC made a really good point. And I went, you know, now Tristan, you lost me there. Use role play to settle a role play encounter. See, I don't believe in the role play encounter. I think the entire game is role playing. I think you're never not role playing. Talking to people is not role playing. Talking in character is not role playing. The whole game is role playing. And so anyways, I'm okay with that, but I'm also okay with using mechanics and dice because I think that's exciting and interesting. It's the reason why we use mechanics and dice to settle our combats, right? Instead of just describing, you know, what our characters do with their sword. You know, I spin to the left and I bring up my sword in a arcing slash straight onto their shield. And the GM goes, oh, their shield arm goes weak, but they've left you open. And so they stab forward with a counter riposte. You're like, I expected the riposte. And I use my offhand to pass it away with the dagger. And that leaves their inner thigh open, which I slide off of shield, stab through. You're right. That was such a good description of your combat. The NPC is totally dead. We could also do that. I don't know why people think that this somehow only applies to social situations. Nope. It applies to anything. But everyone hears that and they think, oh, that's so dumb and that's so stupid. Well, guess what? Talking in character and then just making it up what happens is just as stupid. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's just as stupid. Anyways, point is, if you're going to have mechanics like this, then it needs to work both ways. That's all I'm saying. Otherwise, I'm not interested. because it's one-handed. We either change their opinion or we don't. We have nothing to lose here, right? We have nothing at stake. So that's what I dislike. And also too, there is this classic villain. You know, Saruman is kind of like this in Lord of the Rings, but Peter Baelish is also kind of like this in Game of Thrones. There's this idea of the villain that you're afraid of, because when we play RPGs these days, what are we always afraid of? The guy that can kill us, right? We're afraid of the lady, the battle maiden who can kill us, right? We're afraid of dying because that's the one way that the rules interject and say we don't get to play our characters anymore. But like in fiction, if you read like all sorts of fiction from Wheel of Time to Robert E. Howard, right? There's this idea of the evil civilized character, right? The king's vizier, the worm tongue character, the Saruman character, the character who you're afraid of because of their ability to not magically, but to convince people and deceive people and manipulate people. This idea of the wickedness and evilness of civilization. And that's something that role-playing games, by and large, fail at completely because players are completely in charge of their thoughts and actions. And I know there's people out there who go, I'm a really good role player. And if the GM said something, I would totally be like, oh, you've convinced me and I'm going to betray my party. And I'm like, no, you wouldn't. You're a liar. You're a liar. You're a liar. And I don't believe you. And even if you say that you did it, I still don't believe you. So anyways, I think it's much more interesting for something like this to happen. And then, you know what the other part of it is too? Here's the other thing. Here's the truth. Even if you aren't a liar and the GM says something and you go, yes, my person is convinced and I'm going to betray the party. The rest of the party, rightfully so, is going to go, you're a dick. Okay? But if my character becomes convinced by the NPC because I was engaged in a duel of wits and that NPC managed to make me realize that what I was doing was actually harming the crown and that my group and my activity was actually going to bring the realm to chaos, and that actually the patriotic thing to do would be to turn my party members in before they can do any more damage. And if that's what played out mechanically in like a duel of wits, and then I went and betrayed my party members by turning them in, the rest of the party wouldn't be mad at me because they know that it wasn't because I just decided that my character is convinced and I'm going to fuck you guys over. They go like, no, you didn't have a choice. Like your character got convinced in a, it's like you got killed essentially, virtually. And that's, to me, that's actually really compelling. And it eliminates the feels bad man because some other player decided to be a jerk and decide that now is the time that my character got convinced. And they're like, oh no, trust me. The GM said exactly what I needed to see or hear to convince my player character. And they're like, no, you didn't. You're just being a dick. And maybe they're not, maybe they're wrong, but they're going to think you're a dick. Anyways. I don't know what's going on here in chat, but yeah, exactly. Littlefinger. That's the best example from modern things I could think of. My agency. I agree. In fact, side tangent. I think that's true role playing. True role playing is when the PC demands to be played a certain way, and you, as the player, have to bring that to life, Broad question, is having very loose rules for social versus strict rules for combat off-putting? I mean, it's hard to say, LP, because that is definitely the way that it is in most RPGs. But I mean, right here, this makes me not interested in this right off the bat. I think Trevor has said that Broken Empires will use like a binding situation for the negotiation rules. I think maybe Colville, maybe Draw Steel does too. I don't remember. We didn't get a chance to get to the negotiation or whatever they're called, social conflict rules. So also this already makes me interested. Each team assigns a primary negotiator. These characters make the rolls when negotiating. Boring. I don't want one person rolling all the dice. I'm sorry. It's boring. It's boring. The whole pick the best person and they'll be doing most of the speaking. Like, that's just not good for a group game. I don't even care if it's realistic. We're all here to play, you know? And like, look, if it's just like one and done, make a diplomacy check and move on with our lives, then that's fine. I'm fine letting the bard be the person who makes the diplomacy check to convince, you know, the innkeeper that, you know, us wanted criminals, you know, he should, you know, you remember us. We grew up in this town. I know, but the king's justice is looking for you everywhere. And he's promised 100 crowns to anyone who can, you know, turns you in. It's like, please, you knew my mother and my father. Make a diplomacy check. You succeed. Yes, I'll hide you. Great. Cool. A little bit of, you know, dialogue, in-character dialogue, one check, and we're moving on with our lives. If you're going to have like a whole fucking tactic situation here or whatever, then I'm not going to be like, let the other person just, you know, sit it out. I don't like that. And again, here, they even said, so you've lost the negotiation. Don't give up yet. Try a different check. They can try again. Like, there's no consequence for losing other than they say, I'm not good. You know? So like, that's what I like. You know, I like that, you know, players, when they enter a combat, right, they're willing to put something on the line, their characters' lives. And as a community, we've accepted the fact that somebody basically saying that, like, I'm okay with the GM and the rules coming out with a solution which says that my character is dead and never gets to play ever again. Everyone's like, that is totally acceptable. But then when they say, hey, the outcome of this situation might be your player, your PC has a change of heart or change of mind and now holds this opinion, which you are as a player character, as the player, you know, honor bound, duty bound, responsibility bound, game bound to play and have that influence and guide your course of action. Everyone's like, my agency. It's like, so let me get this straight. If I killed you and you had no agency and you were just dead, you would be okay with that. And everyone's like, yes. I don't get it. Now, to be fair, there are some games that say, yes, you can't die unless you, the player, want to die. Fabulous Ultimate does this. Great. Good job. You're at least consistent in your tone. But when you have a game where it's like the GM could kill you or turn you to stone or whatever, or totally control your actions, but it was a charm spell, so it's okay. What? How does that make it okay? Because it was magic. So your problem isn't that your character can be convinced, or that your problem isn't that you lose agency. Your problem is that the methodology by which it's been convinced. Yeah, I don't want people to be able to convince me unless it's magical. Wait, so you don't think anybody in real life gets convinced of anything? Like, what is going on with your mindset that this is to happen? All right, anyways. There's a whole thing here about negotiating with groups, but, you know, again, they kind of lost me with the there's no stakes. Oh, cool art. I'll give the art 10 out of 10. I don't know what this is, but this is awesome. Look at this. Awesome character coming in here. This character's just waiting. I love their art. I love the look of this sword. She arrives. She takes off her helm. She's like some sort of dark magic person, and this person looks like the hero, but like maybe he's been forced into a very bad situation. I like it. And then we get into the fight rules, and then we definitely see our isekai character full on. They're still wearing their office ID badge and a tie, and they're using a briefcase to fight because, you know, why wouldn't they? Combat. All right. And this is probably where we will end it, is combat, because here we go. When to use these rules. Whenever you get embroiled in a physical or magical battle with an adversary and the outcome is uncertain, don't use the fight rules for attacks on sleeping or otherwise incapacitated foes. Instead, just allow the PCs to slay them. Okay. What do these rules cover? Calculating your combat values, creating battlefields, using actions and moves, the effects of damage and injury, how to sunder inanimate objects, and fighting colossal foes. So it looks like we've got our ducks in a row here. All right, to start a fight. Determine who started the fight. They take their turn first. And we saw that earlier, right? Like if the PC start the fight, they all get to take their actions and the GM go. Was the fight started with an ambush? Determine whether it was successful and whether the unsuspecting side misses a turn. So old school ambush rules. I ambushed you. You're surprised. You don't get any actions. So that's step 1. Pretty simple. Step 2, create the battlefield. Your GM describes where the fight is taking place, breaking it down into battlefield areas that you can occupy and move between. It's a zone-based combat. It's not square-based. Some areas may suffer from a condition, which makes certain actions more challenging to perform there. Maybe it's on fire, or it's underwater, or it's covered in thorny vines. Position the teams. The GM divides the characters involved into opposing teams and allocates each combatant to a battle area to start in. Basically, put them on the map. That's Step 4, taking turns. The first team agrees what order their members will act in. Ben, you're reminding me I need to do a deep dive into the One Ring. I've read through it, the second edition, and I glanced through first edition, but I've flipped through second edition, but not deeply enough. And I need to spend more time with it because there were some game ideas in there that were very interesting. And I know you're not sold on the combat, but there was something there that I thought was engaging, and I don't remember what it was, and I need to go back to it. So I do need to look at Tor. So once your team is activating, it's a group decision about who goes first. So each member makes their move and performs their action in any agreed upon order. Your GM it looks like you have to move and then act. You only get one act. Your GM will resolve and describe the outcome of each combatant's action as they are made, and then the opposing teams take their turn similarly well. Then end the fight is over if one team has been incapacitated, surrendered, or if they have escaped to safety. If you're still trading blows, then repeat back to step 4 and take your turns again. All right, combat values. When you participate in a fight, you'll be frequently referencing 4 combat values: attack bonus, defense rating, speed rating, and hearts total. Your attack bonus represents how good you are at hitting things and is a reflection of your training and your killer instinct. Your base attack bonus is determined by your calling and rank and is listed on your calling's advancement table. Watch out for factors that might modify your bonus, such as using a master class weapon. When to apply attack bonus? It applies whenever you make an action. So our calling is champion, and we are rank 1. That gives us a +1. Our ability is we are using our favored weapon. That gives us a +1. And our weapon type is a master class weapon. That gives us a +1. So our total attack bonus is +3. Now remember, with attack bonuses, we're trying to roll high. Our defense rating is a chibi. We're, as a small species, our base value is 11. We are wearing medium armor, which gives us +4. That gives us our armor class or defense rating of 15. And presumably, someone's attack bonus has to equal our defense rating or higher. Hearts. We start with 3 because we are a champion, and our quirk, Girthsome, gives us an additional heart. So we have 4 hearts. Remember, all weapons by default do 1 point of damage, and if you roll 20 or higher with your die roll, then you score an additional heart of damage. We know that 2-handed weapons did 2 hearts of damage. Armor does not appear to be any sort of damage reduction at all. Speed, average plus max of fast -1 for being Girthsome gives us a slow speed. Okay. Hearts. This determines how much superficial damage you can take before you receive a lasting injury. Hearts represent a mix of your fighting spirit, luck, and pain threshold. So it's the classic hit points. It's not just, chunks of meat flying from your body. All right. And they are depleted every time you take your damage from attack. And not if you studied your Agrippa, which I have. I still say it's like one of the best fight scenes, I think, ever. Everything about that fight scene is just chef's kiss. If I played 7th Sea, Ben, I would just want every fight scene to look like that one. Or like when they have the Holocaust cloak at the gate and they pretend to be the Dread Pirate Roberts and set him on fire. Anyways. All of you go, all of we go. It's not my favorite, but I have real problems with initiative systems in general. Honestly, Tundalis, who's here, we're going to be doing a look into Trespasser next week. I think their initiative system is one of my favorite systems of all time, of initiative systems. It's very simple, it's quick, and it gives you just enough variance in play that it feels exciting. That's the biggest problem I have with initiative systems. They're just not exciting. Yeah, I probably just described every session of your 7th Sea, Ben. I'm willing to bet that there's a lot of 7th Sea sessions that don't do that, but that is that is what that game is good at, and I respect it for that. So our speed rating determines how many battlefield areas we can move through on our turn. During a fight, when you are aware of an inbound attack and you are free to take evasive action, a high speed rating also provides you with a defense bonus. Okay. So apparently if we're fast, we can add 2 to our defense rating, and very fast, we can add +4 to our defense rating. We can also sometimes use our speed rating in contests where it can provide a bonus or a major bonus if we're significantly faster than our opponents. Note that armors restrict what our maximum achievable speed rating is. And lastly, our defense rating is our ability to deflect or avoid blows. And this is used anytime we are targeted by a physical or magical attack. It all goes just against defense rating. So here's like a nice little chart that tells us what our thing. So if we're a small character, 11, wearing medium armor, 4, we have a defense rating of 15, we're using a standard shield, 16, and we're fast, we have a defensive rating of 18. Dang. Okay. Creating a battlefield. We can create basic areas, customized areas. You can attack adversaries in the same area as with any weapon, but melee weapons are most effective in close range. You can only physically attack adversaries in a different area if you have extended range, such as a missile weapon. Pretty simple. The amount of areas you can move through in your turn is set by your speed rating, and the GM determines how many people can, submit that. We could add new areas in a fight if something opens up. Custom areas should be interesting, not tedious. Don't get hung up on creating exact one. If necessary, draw some stuff out. So there you go. We got current area. If they're one area away, you can use a lash weapon. You can use like a chain or a whip weapon. You can use thrown weapons and small mechanical missiles. If they're 2 areas away, you need to use a bow or a large mechanical missile, like a big gun. And then if they're in the current area, they can only use melee weapons. And here's an example again of some basic areas, just 3 zones, right? The zone they start in, the zone we start in, the one in the middle. And here's a more complex area where there's a bog to the top, there's banks on either side, but then there's an area between of stones. And this is where we can determine conditions for different areas. And they've got some tags, basically, or traits that we can put onto an area. It could be cramped. This gives our defense rating, doesn't benefit from our speed rating. So this is pretty crunchy. So like if we're in a cramped area, like a narrow twisting dungeon corridor or like a narrow twisting cave, then it doesn't matter that we're very fast. We can't move around well, and we don't get to benefit from that speed rating. Meanwhile, if we're using a weapon and it's not unarmed, concealed, or small mechanical, we get a penalty to our dice rolls, our attack rolls. And additionally, they will consider our size. If we're a small size, we might be easier to maneuver, whereas if we're large size, it might be very difficult. Harmful areas can cause us to lose a heart if we're in that area because of don't stand in the fire. Isolated areas have to use an extra move. Obscured areas give you a snag. That's disadvantage on attacks that involve precision, perception, or aiming. Sheltered areas cause people to attack them, get a snag. Precarious, you have to make a check or you fall, etc., etc. So here we go. The noxious bog is suffocating and harmful. The slippery stepping stones are precarious. So we start the fight. So start a fight. Simply shout, "Fight start." Has anyone ever started this? Fight start. The GM then creates the battlefield and we start taking actions. Okay, pretty normal here. Ambush. The other side doesn't get to go for one turn. Potentially, if we do ambush, we have to make a contest. That's that versus roll that we liked so much of the lowest deafness on our team versus the highest insight on their team. We can move through zones, and then we can perform an action. The result of your action is involved immediately. And then the fight ends when one team is dead or incapacitated. If an offer of surrender is accepted, a team flees, or an intervention prevents the battle from continuing. And here's our movement speeds. We can take combat actions, custom actions, assist actions, and tactical actions. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is not old school. Like, it's like, I don't consider this OSR at all. Like, there's just way too much going on here. Attack. Here comes the pain. That's still one of my favorite videos of all time. I'm sure you guys are all nerds. I'm sure you've seen it. It's when that guild is like fighting Ragnaros and they're all like basically dead and they're dropped and they're just waiting for and they're almost killing him. He's down to like 1 or 2%. And then he submerges and like the sons of Ragnaros come out and they're like chasing him around, just waiting. And all like the DPS is like dead, but they've got soul stones. And then they wait and Ragnaros pops up. And then like the mage is like, here comes the pain, bitch. And then he like crits it with a frost bolt and kills Ragnaros. It's like one of the coolest. Like, I didn't play guild raid level WoW, but that video made me want to. Anyways. Attack. Choose a weapon or ability to strike with and select a target. Make your foes raise and announce it. I swing at the Skeleman with my glorious hammer. Skeleman is such a great like 90s JRPG. Like, Skeleman is like what I would expect out of like a Dragon Quest game, you know? I mean, I love zone-based combat. Forbidden Lands use zone-based combat. I mean, I'm a fan of that. Like, if you're it's somewhere between grid-based and just full theater of the mind. Like, having zones with a little bit of tactical oomph to them, I think is pretty cool. I think there's a way you can make that really interesting. It's difficult to make sure though that it just doesn't become a really big grid. If you put too many zones in and stuff, you know. Oh, totally. There was totally a character limit. They couldn't put Skeletal Man. They had to put Skeleman, right? So we roll a d20 and we add our attack bonus. Remember all of our modifiers. They have to equal. 20 is always a success. Rolling a nat 1 is always a fail. So note that if we roll their defense exactly, that is not a special success. That was only for outside of combat. Here, that doesn't exist. If we roll better than our extra damage number, we do an additional heart of damage. And if we miss, we miss. If we're wielding a melee weapon in each hand, we can attack with our second weapon only if we fail with the first, and that gets a -2 penalty. I actually kind of like that rule. I actually like that rule a lot. Actually, as I recall, my BX house rule, I might even have this written down. My BX house rules were, if you dual wielded, this is like when I used to play BX at cons and stuff. Your choices were to dual wield one hand, which meant your other hand could hold a one-handed weapon and then like a shield or a torch or a two-handed weapon. A one-handed weapon was normal and did D8 damage in a normal attack roll. A two-handed weapon, you could only use small weapons like blades or short swords that did D6 damage. But you basically made 2 attack rolls and you got to use the higher. So basically you had advantage, but you had to roll 2 D20, take the highest, and then the weapon did D6 when you're dual wielding. And then great weapons did either D10, I think it was D10, but you had damn advantage. So you rolled 2d10 and took the highest, is the way that my two-handed weapons worked. And I remember a lot of people thought that was very, very nice. I thought that was pretty good, simple, elegant. It meant that when you're using a two-handed weapon, when you hit, it was for a good amount of damage. And like the two-handed the dual wielding people hit a lot, but they would usually do smaller amounts of damage, right? And then, of course, obviously the person who's rolling normal, but they have an extra hand, so they can use a shield, or they can use it. They can hold the light, they can hold the torch, and it was really simple and easy, and it didn't muck around with. Basically, I only had 3 weapon types, right? Like I had small weapons, medium weapons, large weapons. That was basically it. Oh yeah. I'm not the first person to come up with that, and I'm sure other people have used that as well, but. Yeah, we called it damn advantage. I actually used that when we played 5e. The last time I ran 5e for Bob, Bob was a barbarian, and he was raging, and the raging gave him like +1 or +2 to damage, and he still like was rolling like crap. He was like rolling 1s or 2s, and I was just like, you know what? You have damn advantage instead. And he was like, oh, cool. And then he was rolling like 2d12, keep high, and he was like, this is awesome, and so like when he was like reckless attacking as his barbarian, right? He had advantage on his attack rolls, and then he had advantage on his damage rolls. It was pretty sweet. Defend. If you want to take your turn off, you can do nothing and you get +2 to your defense. And you defend another character in the same area as you. I like that. That's nice. I like that little touch. That's pretty good. Or you could do a custom action and try to do an attack stunt and basically describe whatever you want to do. I swipe at the bandit queen with my staff and attempt to knock her weapon to the floor. And then the GM defines failure and then make a wager. If you and the GM agree to the proposed success and failure, a wager is made. If a wager can't be agreed on, then your action will revert back to a standard attack roll. And now you roll, and if you succeed, you do your damage and you get the successful condition. And if you fail, you miss and you suffer the agreed. I like this. This is something I would use in BXD&D. I love this. I love that you don't have to choose between trip or damage. The problem with D&D is, damage is king. The best condition is dead 99% of the time. And giving up your ability to do damage just to do something fun feels terrible. This is awesome. This is like the best rule I've seen in the entire game so much. Yeah, that's pretty great. The fact that you're basically turning, you're turning the success and the failure from you hit and do damage and you fail and miss to you miss and you suffer some sort of penalty and you hit and you do damage and they get some sort of, you get your effect. I love that. Simple, quick, easy, very, easy to thing. And then I love wagering. I know a lot of people don't like that kind of metagame conversation. I love having that conversation with my players and tempting them and saying like, oh yeah, I'll give you that, but this is the price you have to pay. And then they have to sit there and think about it and go like, oh yeah, And then if they don't accept it, then I go, okay, then it's just a standard attack roll. The GM has the final say. Like, I don't want to get like too much back and forth into like legitimate negotiating, but that's great. I think that's fun, quick, awesome, and flavorful. And I think that's great. Very cool. A combat trick. Man, I suck at coming up with consequences before a roll is made. That's so funny that you say that, Ben. I just asked my players to come up with consequences. I mean, that's good too. That's good too. And the reason why I say this is because, I mean, this is kind of what this, get rid of the normal attack and just focus on the, what is it called? The attack stunt. And you basically kind of, sort of have what PBTA is, right? Where if the player rolls low, then the GM gets to, put something back onto them and do some damage back onto them or do some sort of effect onto them, which is, I think why I enjoy that back and forth so much, because it makes it feel less, I swung, missed, and did nothing. Like as a player even, I don't care if my character's getting messed up. I want just something to happen. A combat trick does not use your attack roll, and instead you try to not do damage. Ooh. All right. Okay. So I have a problem with this. The problem is this. We all agreed that the whole roll high thing in combat and then roll low for checks and contests was kind of awkward, right? We all agreed that. But I was at least taking some comfort in the fact that when you're in combat, you're rolling high, you're adding your attack bonus, you're trying to beat their defense, yada, yada. But, and so while they were two separate systems, they never existed at the same time. But the combat trick allows you to make a check in combat, which means that or a contest, potentially, check or contest, which means now we're back to rolling low in combat. And I don't like that. And this is basically for your character who sucks at attacking, but is highly skilled, right? And and it apparently is submitted to diminishing returns. A unique trick can catch your foe off guard. Try the same thing again, however, and if you attempt to use the same kind of attack, stunt, or combat trick, you suffer a snag. So basically disadvantage. If you sufficiently alter a subsequent attack or combat trick or attack stunt, your GM may allow you to avoid the return to diminishing returns. And I like that idea too. I actually really like this rule too. I would totally steal this rule too. You know, if last round you swung your mace, you know, hard, trying to knock them, you know, not just to crush them, but to knock them over, and you succeeded and they took damage and got knocked prone, then if you try to do that again next turn, rather than just being like, I'm just going to keep doing that, you introduce diminishing returns and you just give them a disadvantage or stacking disadvantage potentially. Because I used stacking disadvantage in 5e and stacking advantage in 5e. So I like that. And then lastly, assist actions. This is where you give up your turn to help other people. Focus your attack on opening up your foe's defense rather than doing damage. Define your assist. Choose what weapon you're going to use. Choose an ally that will benefit. I let out a battle roar and wildly swing my hammer around to draw the Temple Guardian's attention so Gavril can get a clean shot at its weak point. On their turn, the chosen ally benefits from a minor bonus to any attack roll. An additional attack assist can increase against the same foe, can increase this to a +4 bonus. An attack assist lasts for 1 turn. And it looks like there's no check, which is good, which is fine. A tactical assist, which is different than an attack assist. Use an action to help an ally make an otherwise impossible attack. For example, holding a beast's mouth open so an ally can throw a bomb in. This is the same thing, but now you have to make a check or a contest. Or the last thing you can do is take tactical actions, which are not tactical assists and assist attacks, because those are assist actions. These are tactical actions, which is use one of your abilities from your race, or just give up your action to move. So here we go. Oh, you can react. Predict an adversary's action and declare your reaction to it. On your turn, declare you are going to react by proposing a response to an anticipated event. For example, I will crouch in the corner. Oh, so it's ready. It's ready action. You can ready. And you can also flee. A fight will end if one side decides, and remember, you go in groups. So you guys can all just decide to flee or flee. Your GM may decide the team that takes flight must win a deftness contest to get away cleanly, with failure allowing the opposing team to get one final turn. So it looks like flee is automatic. The only question is sometimes the GM may make you make a deftness check as a team to see if they just get one free round of beating into you before you leave. So we can flee, ready, drink a potion, do any sort of miscellaneous action, pull out a weapon. We can move, or we can use one of our class abilities. We can attack and do opponent harder damage, or we can defend and raise our and an ally's defense by 2. For assists, we can either just provide a static +2 automatically, or we can make a check that will allow them to open up some sort of weak spot, or, like it says, reach the Colossus's strike point so that they can, unleash the combo move. Yeah, do the fastball special. An attack stunt does damage, uses attack roll, and afflicts a condition like disarmed. Whereas a combat trick, the one that I have the real problem with, is a check. So I don't like tactical assist and combat trick, because tactical assist and combat trick use the roll low methodology, and attack stunt and attack assist and attack and all use the roll high methodology. So it's kind of awkward. First aid. Stop a fallen combat from dying. To perform first aid, you must be in the same battlefield area as your patient. You can stop an ally dying who has suffered the near death or mutilated injury if you can get to them within 2 turns. You can wake a character who is out cold, but they won't be able to make any further combat actions for the remainder of the fight. Well, then why would I want to wake them up? Okay. All right, here we go. Damage. You start every fight with full hearts. Hearts are depleted after being hit. Depends on what they hit you with. When an attack reduces your hearts to 0 or below, you must roll on the injury table and suffer the consequences. If you are reduced to 0 hearts in combat from a source other than a weapon attack, for example, from a harmful battlefield condition, you roll on alternative injury table. If your injury permits, you may continue to battle on with less than 0 hearts. But now you must roll on the injury table every time you're hit. So you don't go down unless the injury roll tells you to do so. Running out of hearts means that whenever you get hit, you just roll on the injury table. If you reduce an adversary to 0 hearts, they do not suffer an injury. Instead, you may choose to slay them or spare them. Totally reasonable. All right, so injuries are lingering ailments sustained after losing all of your hearts in a fight or from significant force of harm. Roll on the injury table. If it's the first injury that you've sustained in a fight, use the results for table 1, light injury. If it's your second injury, presumably in a fight, use the severe injury table. And then for your third and any following injuries, use the critical injuries. These injuries remain until you receive proper treatment, which I'm guessing is a downtime action. Damage can come from mundane, such as non-magical weapons, or special damage, magical damage, such as bright, frost, lightning, and twilight. So, what do we roll? So we roll a d20. Is that what we're rolling here? Okay. So we roll a d20, and if it's our first roll, the highest we can get is out cold, which is we are knocked out, senseless, and knocked out for the rest of the fight. So we're knocked out and we can't do anything. Most of the time, though, our first injury is going to be that we get stunned and we miss next turn, or that our armor cracks and it is damaged and doesn't provide as much defense until it is repaired. Okay? Or we are wounded and our maximum hearts total is reduced by 1. So that is a death spiral, because that means that the next fight we only have 2 hearts instead of 3 hearts. But if it's our second injury, you'll note that we still have a chance of getting shocked or stalled, but now we can now roll things like near death, severed, and if we roll a 19 or a 20, we're mutilated or have a mortal wound. And then if it's our third or final injury, a critical injury, we're very unlikely to simply be stunned. Instead, we are much more likely to be knocked out, dead, severed, mutilated, or quiet death, or messy affair. I Camos with the €5 says, I think these injury tables are in the game as to baffle the TTRPG academics as to what GNS corner this game falls into. These are gamist simulationists. These are more simulationists, honestly. They really actually are. Right? It's escalating death spiral, injury mechanics. They all have different. I mean, look at this. We're rolling to see what limb gets severed. This game suddenly went from so now we're back to this game being OSR again. These are very OSR style mechanics. Right? Like, this game is like, I don't know what to do this, This game strikes me as, what if we took Fabula Ultima but amplified everything nobody cares about? I don't know that nobody cares about it. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people. There's a weird group of people, Ben, who the way they view RPGs is very bipolar. And there's everything else, and then there's combat. And for some odd reason, there's this group of people who want to treat them like they're two completely separate games. For some people, it's the game is like really old school and really whatever. And then combat is very gamist. But then for other people, combat is very gamist. And outside of it, it's all very narrative, FBT, we make stuff up. And then when combat starts, it's like hardcore, rules is written, no GM interpretation, run the game as plays. So it's very interesting, this kind of juxtaposition. And Andrea says, the injury system is so un-anime style, and usually you don't see it in JRPGs. Sure, huge changes can happen to your character, but they happen for a reason. Yeah, this is not anime at all. I don't even know that this is very SNES involved. This is very old school. This is like Hackmaster, This is very Forbidden Lands-esque, right? All right, well, We got a whole section here on treating injuries with prosthetics, downtime, as it was expected. What if you're a biomechanoid, magical treatment, blah, blah, blah. We can also destroy items. So here's more simulationist stuff about the toughness of different objects and how to rate it and how many hearts does a weapon have or how many weapons, you know. And then we have a whole thing about fighting, basically, you know, Shadow of the Colossus. They have strike points that you have to destroy. And, oh, that's kind of cool. Like the colossal creatures are divided into strike points that work like battlefield areas. That's a cool, you know, that's a cool way to think of it, you know. Like you have to move through the different areas and they each have different hearts. And then there's the core point. And if we reduce the core point to 0, that damages it. And it, you know, you can destroy and cripple the Colossus by taking out the different strike points. And in addition to their normal actions, a Colossus can do a sweep action. It targets one of its strike points with the aim of harming or hindering everyone located there. So, like, if everybody's, you know, stacked onto the head, you know, it can do some sort of like lightning crackle field across its head or something like that. So that's pretty cool. That's a kind of a neat way to do that. To attack with a melee weapon, you must be on or next to the strike point that you're standing on. You can move between the areas. You may have to make a check. Each strike point has its own hearts total. Reducing it to 0 would destroy or disable it. The Colossus will be crippled when it loses one of its strike points. The effect will depend on the strike point. For example, destroying a limb might disable an attack or hinder its movement, and destroying the shell might reveal the Colossus's core point. So that's pretty cool. And hey, look, there's that guy. There he is, being fought. That's pretty cool. So, and I like that it uses an existing system that we already knew from the sort of zone-based conflict, right? It just takes this idea of these battlefield zones, which have different effects in different areas and different harmful things, and sort of applies it to that. And I think that's awesome. I think this is a nice system, and it's cool. And I think it's fun. And I think I actually think it would be really fun and flavorful and play out the way that you would want it to, I think. Okay, that is the end of the fight chapter and into the perils chapter. So we're not going to cover that because it's 10 o'clock, but perils are basically, you know, you're burning, falling, drowning, different status conditions. You can be blinded and deafened. You can be ballooned. That's a new one. I don't know if I've seen ballooned before. You can be cheebed, aka what is it called? Tiny in Final Fantasy, the tiny curse. Disoriented. I mean, here comes the condition parade. Oh, you can be blinded, deafened, ballooned, cheap, disoriented, fatigued, dispirited, jellified, overburdened, putrefied, petrified, restrained, terrified, starved, toppled, suffocated. All right. I don't know what to tell you other than I don't care. That's just me personally, you know. Balloon does sound terrifying. Jellified, also pretty terrified here. And the problem with this is each of these things has their own set of rules. And, you know, they apply to different things and they apply to different areas. And it's just a lot of rules to know. I mean, you're like, oh, Pathfinder 2 does that. Yeah, I know. And then Downtime. Great art. Great art. Very Hyrulean on the shield here. I like it. So Downtime, we're not going to get into it, but it looks like you can identify stuff, craft stuff, heal an injury. Very Blades in the Dark-esque here. You can prepare for your next adventure. You can recruit. So it's like very, you know, you have hirelings and stuff. You can manage your reputations. This is straight out of Blades in the Dark, where you can like manage your heat and manage your stuff like that. Socialize, tame, do some Pokemon training, do some training of your companions, also straight out of Blades in the Dark. Or go on a unique endeavor, aka something that you can make something up. Craft rules. And then there is a social bond system here that kind of looks like Fabula Ultima a little bit. If you forge a bond, you do it in downtime by using the socializing action. I kind of like that. Like Fabula Ultima does it during the camp scenes, which I think is also totally awesome. But I don't mind having this be like something that you have to do during a downtime to build these bonds and have a great thing. And then if you can benefit from a minor bonus if that bond would provide you with extra impetus, which I think is great. And then the craft system, which we know is very elaborate. So I'm not going to really even do it, justice, but it looks like there's, crafting an item. You need to have specialized kits, different materials and additives. This is kind of what I wanted to do for Dragontide. So maybe I'll just steal these rules if they're good and put them into Dragontide. Cause I do think there's like 20 pages or something of magic materials and artifacts and imbuing weapons and shields and repairs and gadgeteering and tailoring and forging and cooking and alchemy. So that's pretty cool. I like that. And then we get into the GM stuff. And we talk about the world, the setting, the ages of the humanity. It's a very fully detailed world here. Wow, that's pretty good. Yeah. More art that looks amazing. And here's our Twilight Meridian, separated at the edge between the dark side and the light side. Locations look awesome. The Heaven Seal, the Uncharted Outer Worlds, the Elsewheres. Very cool. And then Game Master advice. Creating NPCs, allies, NPC creation. Creating an adventure site. Have a concept, a theme, flavor. What are they trying to do? Stench. 5 to 10 locations. Join them with access points. Good generic dungeon advice. Creating an adventure map. Different zones and areas. Traveling between this area. Of course, this is assuming that you're a skilled artist and can create awesome pieces of artwork to go along with your map. I don't think our maps would quite look like that, right? And then very quickly here, let's take a look at Skelemen. So this is a bestiary entry. So they're a mook. We didn't really get into CR ratings, but it looks like they understand that they're pretty weak stuff here. They attack +0. They have 1 heart. They've got these stats. They're an undead monster with the dark aligned. If they reassemble 3 turns after being reduced to 0 hearts. They're immune to ailments that affect flesh. This is their habitat, their gear. They communicate, their tactics. And that's it. That's all there is to the monster. Oh, never mind. There's a page 2. So their abilities. They are the living dead. They are not affected by immune to fatigue, starvation, suffocation, and aging, immune to toxins, and can only be animated within 1 mile of a living creature or a skelemonarch. When out of range, they are aware but inert. Pull yourself together. And then what they yield from their treasure table. And then here's their mood table. They're preoccupied, embarrassed, or hateful. The Skelemen are in the midst of setting up a trap or ambush. Awkward. And then, that's kind of a cool idea. Reskin. How to, easily reskinned as enchanted dolls or robotic creatures that possess a primitive self-assembly function. I like that idea of including different advice on how to reskin that monster. That's a good idea. Like, what do these abilities and traits work well as reskinned as different monsters? And yeah, like a weird little enchanted dolls that put them like, Mr. Potato Head and put themselves back together, or some sort of like auto repairing nanite bots or something. Oh, there's the Skelemaster. So we end with the bestiary. And then, like I said, there's the character sheet. And then we've got all sorts of cheat sheets. Here's all our melee weapons. And again, remember, they're just basically, to me personally, I think this is great. A number of weapons. Flavor it however you want, but standard, small, concealable dagger, quick little rapiers, masterful katana. I'm the the Iaijutsu master or whatever, the big axe weapon, the polearm weapon, the whip weapon, and then some sort of combination weapon. You know, like this covers everything you need. I personally like the weapon list shouldn't really have to be much longer than this. Here are your missile weapons, cheat sheet, your different armor, your shields, your outfits, information about other stuff you can buy, torches and lanterns and gear, and consumables. Followers, properties, a lot of cheat sheets, yeah. When you're the number of cheat sheets in this game is longer than the rule set for a lot of OSR games. So that alone should tell you that this thing, but again, there's some weird things in this game that just stand out as being like strangely not OSR. All right. I just want to quickly look at a battle princess here. So they are a bright magic user. They use their magic and prowess to defend what they hold most dear. So they start with 3 abilities. The Heart's Blade. They can call forth a weapon forged from your wishes in your heart. These magically manifested weapons can manifest as Master Quick, Mighty Lash. They can choose a magical material, which must be from the crafting chapter. So now we got to look up that. Choose one of the followings. It's glittering, bonus to attack rolls. Righteous. Its extra damage threshold is reduced by 2, so it does extra damage on a 16 instead of an 18 or higher. Sheltering, we can parry once per combat as the same as a standard shield. And at rank 6, it can now transform into a secondary form, becoming a missile weapon or a gun blade. We can summon it at will. So we have this, we're like a Jedi, right? Kind of, sort of. We can have the Shield of Love. And once per fight, we can bestow an ally with a force field that absorbs a point of damage. And then we can shield 1, 2, 3 people eventually. And finally, we have a soul companion with a magical companion who joins us. As we get higher ranks, we at 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, we get a new ability. We can get gem lights and make our crystal glow on the back of our hand with an equivalent light. We can also transfer an injury from a target to ourselves. And we could have the glittering machine. You're able to channel your powers to summon a helpful tool or device instead of your magical heart blade. So you can create like stuff that'll help you out of combat. Love chef. You're a passionate cook and you pour your heart and soul into the food you make. You gain crafting cooking. Use for specific rules on creating items, refer to craft, and you use your aura, your charisma for crafting roles. And again, we get to pick more and more of these as we get higher level. Battle dance, I mean, this is pretty complicated stuff. There's a lot of abilities here. And these are ones that we can pick at lower levels. And as we get higher levels, we can pick these advanced abilities. We can still pick ones from the lower levels if we want, but then the highest level of abilities are for rank 6 and rank 8, like spirit wings. We grow flying wings and we can fly at our speed, and they remain until we call for our Heart's Blade or we invoke our glittering machine ability. So we can't fight with our Heart's Blade and fly at the same time, but other than that, we can just fly around. Or we could summon the Radiant Blade. Our soul burns so brightly that our Heart's Blade transcends its material form and becomes a shard of pure, devastating light. So it goes full lightsaber mode. And that's pretty cool. So yeah, there's a lot of decent amount of mechanical crunch here. Here's the whole thing about making your soul companion of what you get. So that is Break RPG. Now, Break RPG says that this is a game of tabletop exploration and adventure set in a place of wonder and peril. We will journey across shattered landscapes. We will explore ruins and wonders of the modern age. We will encounter and interact with other unusual inhabitants. We will negotiate or fight with monsters. We will survive and endure their perils and challenges. We'll craft items, create social bonds, attempt to rise through the adventuring ranks to become a legend, and experience the wonder, humor, tragedy, and triumph of adventuring. So did we do that? Yes, but at what cost? I personally feel like this game, again, not a review, just my first impression, has a little bit of an identity crisis. I do feel like this game has a little bit of an identity crisis. I feel like there's parts of this game that feel like they don't belong. I feel like the core mechanic they couldn't pick between roll high or roll low. They said, fuck it, we'll do both. Porque no los dos is not always the best way to design your game. Okay? So, you know, I think that's inelegant. I mean, even if it works, I just think it's inelegant. And when you come in with these kind of gamey tropes and these stylistic choices of anime and SNES and stuff, like you then put in like, oh damn, you just got critically hit. Oh, your jaw is destroyed and you're bleeding and you're hemorrhaging from a severed femoral artery. Where did that come from? You know, and your character has like 2 hit points or like 3 hit points. It like rapidly ratchets up to like nonsense levels. That just feels so tonally incorrect. The same anime characters like battle princesses that are leaping from limb to tusk of the giant colossus Legolas on the Mumakil style, who are now contending with like severed limbs and like devastated sternums, and like it just feels tonally completely incomplete. But that's the same thing. It's like, hey, we want to have this fun anime vibe, but we also want to have brutal simulationist injuries. And it's like, hey, we want to have this simple roll low, skill-based system against your aptitude. Yeah, but we also want to have roll high against static DCs in the form of ACs. So this game manages to both have DCs in the form of an armor class and also manages to have roll under skill. But it uses bonuses for both, but it uses them opposite or it uses them negative or benefit depending on which way you're rolling. It's very strange. Very, very strange. And again, the games that they referenced Tundalus at the beginning, like Stormbringer First Edition, Stormbringer uses BRP. It uses basic role playing. I mean, it's D100 roll under system. So Stormbringer is that. And there's that one game. I don't even remember what it was. It was Teenagers from Outer Space. Now Old School Hack, which again, I don't think I have my PDF of Old School Hack around, but Old School Hack was a very modernist approach to BXD&D. It tried to really gamify the procedures of old school gaming. But yeah, I mean, the art's beautiful. The layout is sublime. There's some really good mechanics in there. And even some of the subsystems I'm sure are fine. I'm just a little bit jaded because I've been down that road before. It's interesting. So it's, it kind of does feel like a game that was started 10 years ago and then, didn't catch up. Maybe they did like they buried their head in the sand for 10 years and they didn't want to hear anything. I could live with all of it. I just don't like that you have 2 different resolution systems. I'm sorry. I just don't like that. I just think it's inelegant. It's confusing. And I do this arguably for a living, I mean, not really, but that part was very, that part was very bad. As for the really deep gamey procedural elements, that's fine. But then you have rations, like if you're going to design like a point crawl click system across the world map, then why wouldn't you use use item points, like Fabio Ultima just, in my opinion, does it better, in that respect. That is, and yet you still chose this over Chubos and Ryutama. Yes. I still stand by that. Although to be fair, it was tough. I mean, I had to think, but Chubos was not tough. That part got, but yeah. Because I can still recognize this as having, the game elements that I, to a certain extent I enjoy, but I don't know who this game is for, because I feel like if you're like a narrativist gamer, then the simulationism of tracking rations and arrows and inventory slots and how many days away is something and all injury tracking, and I get my head cut off. So if you're a narrativist player, that stuff is going to be very annoying for you. If you're a gamist player, then you're going to find the simulationist elements annoying, but you're also probably going to find the kind of wishy-washy narrativist elements to be kind of annoying as well. And then if you're a simulationist player, you're going to love it, except you're going to feel like, everything is so gamified. Like, why are we using zones and why are we using points? Why can't I actually just, what do you mean access point? Can't I just go in, you know? So I find that like there's enough in the game to upset each of these sort of core facets of the gaming experience that I feel like there's something that's going to rub everyone the wrong way. Unfortunately, I haven't played it. Maybe I'll get a chance to play it. There's elements there. I mean, I'm sure it's fine, but like, it just seems like I can forgive all of it except for having 2 resolution mechanics. I just think that that's a cardinal sin. I just think that that's bad. So, like you can use your core mechanic in different ways. I'm okay with that, but yeah, I'm not okay with that one. That's my main takeaway. My main takeaway is I don't like that. As for being a game about a journey of adventure, I mean, they put a lot of rules into overland journeying, random encounters, exploring an adventure site, the different types of settlements that you have in the overworld, the type of locations, the guardian monsters versus the income. When you get there, do you linger? Do you explore? Do you press on? Like that all. So yeah, like the game delivers in that respect. The crafting rules seem very deep and detailed. There seems to be enough choices of things to do in Downtime that might be compelling to players, similar to Blades in the Dark, unlike, say, Pathfinder 2 or 5e, where I find the Downtime rules to be very boring. I just feel like if that's, again, if it's a game where my battle princess is running up the legs of gigantic colossal monsters so that I can attack their core point after, working my way through their strike outer system, I don't want to be tracking arrows. I don't want to track arrows or rations in that game. I just feel like those 2 things are on the other side of the spectrum from each other. I'm sorry. They just are. So that's my take on that. I find that there are sim players, narrative players, gamist players, sim narrativist players, and narrative gamist players, but I don't think I've ever encountered a simulationist gamist player. Well, you have Beowulf. They're called D&D players. They're called PF2 players. So yeah, you have. In fact, simulationist gamist is the largest contingent of role-playing gamers in the world, except for the people who obviously are now like, more narrativist because of Critical Role. But the way that a lot of people still play D&D, or at least, back in the day, before the sort of modern narrativist uptick. I mean, 3rd edition D&D is simulationist narrativist, in my opinion. You don't see PF2 or D&D as simulations games. What do you see it as then? I know you don't see it as narrativist, and you can't possibly think it's a simulationist game full on, but you also can't possibly think it's gamist. Trespasser is very gamist simulationist. Yes, Tundalus, I agree with you. From what we've seen. Oh, you just view it as gamist? No way. Absolutely not. Maybe 5th edition. I'm not sure of the rules too much in 5th edition, but certainly like 3rd edition D&D. I mean, that's got a lot of simulationist crunch to it. Jackal says Hackmaster. I mean, Hackmaster is pretty low gamist. What is simulationist about it? The skills, the movement, the equipment, the lighting, the falling, the eating, the rations, the torches. Yeah, the entire skill section for the most part. Not feats. Those are gamist. A lot of the DCs are set by the weather rules, the getting lost rules, the grenade deviation table. So when you throw a grenade and you miss, you roll on the deviation table. I mean, that's very simulationist. So, yes, Tundalus, the 1 second combat system. That's right. The count. Hey, you just swung with a greatsword. So you can't attack for 9 more seconds, okay? So the guy with the dagger in front of you, he's going to be able to attack 3 or 4 times before you can attack again, okay? You're still on your recharge as you wait for your count to count up. I'm sorry you used a big, long weapon, but you got to attack him first because you had reach on him because your weapon has a 5-foot reach and his weapon only has a 2-foot reach. And whoever has the higher reach, they attack first, not initiative order. It's based off of reach. Yeah. Hackmaster's probably one of the most simulationist systems, actually. And even it has narrative mechanics in it in the form of honor, so it's very interesting. I'm sure there's some game style. I mean, nothing is like pure this. Yeah, the count is all. We haven't done it on the channel yet, but I need to get some people together. I need to get Jackal. I need to get some people together, and I just want to actually just do a example of combat, like a real example of Hackmaster combat, and just play it on the stream, you know, or on a recorded video, and just show people. And I just want people to experience what a true sim Hackmaster con, because I've played Hackmaster before. You know, I played it at home, I've played it at cons, and it's like Hardmaster might be 99%. Right. Hackmaster, I think in some ways is a spoof, Ben, of Hardmaster. So that doesn't, you know, that is absolutely correct. Yes, do that. One of my favorite characters. Now this is not Hackmaster 5th edition, which is the Hackmaster that we've talked about, but the original Hackmaster, 4th edition, which was the spoof edition. But I remember one of the funniest things was a character took a bunch of flaws. I don't remember if they rolled randomly or if they picked them, but they were afraid of the dark and they were narcoleptic. I do remember that. So their character would fall asleep randomly and then get afraid. And then get afraid because it was dark, and then they would wake up and they were like, yes, I broke the system. No, Alex, the combat count in Hackmaster is very different from actually, you know what? Maybe it's not as different as you think it is. It is different, but yes, the combat count in 2nd edition. All right, because you had to roll, right? It was you wanted to roll low initiative, right? In 2nd edition, you rolled D10. And then weapon speed factors either added or subtracted to your thing, and dexterity added or subtracted your initiative. And then spell casting had the casting time, which was the segments that got added to your initiative or whatever. I want to say it was something like that. You want in on that, Ton? Okay. Oh, that's excellent. I know Jackal is. Jackal says, point me at some groins to stomp. Yes. You know, I'm just imagining like someone's really excited. They get on the stream, and like the first thing happens is like some goblin archer shoots, you know, beats their defense, gets a good hit. The person fails their top check. They just drop to the ground, blood spurting out of the side of their neck as they sit there writhing in pain for the next 15 seconds. They're not dead. They're just writhing in pain. Anyways, good stuff. It's only Tuesday. Holy crap. It's going to be a long week. Holy crap, it's going to be a long week. Oh, boy. Got a lot of stuff to do. Yeah, that's very VSD Rollmaster. Oh, that's Hackmaster for sure, Ben. But yeah, so this was interesting. I mean, am I jumping down, you know, am I breaking down the door to play this game? Probably not. I feel like if I wanted to play this game, I would just go play Fabula Ultima, maybe, you know, like, or maybe go play, you know, a proper old school game that didn't have all this extra crunch or something like that. I don't know. If you really want anime old school, you know, maybe that's the way to go with it. I don't know. Yeah, not for me. Yeah, not for me either. But, you know, I want to thank the people who did come out. Ikamos, Tundalus, Ben, Thaddeus, who tipped to support this. I mean, look, these first looks, you know, that's the game may not be for me, but maybe it's perfect for you. Maybe you really want crunchy anime old school, in which case kind of, you know, with gamist overtones and a highly degree of proceduralism. This is the game. I just in my experience with, you know, the last couple years, getting a chance to meet a lot of new gamers, that's not a demographic that I think is targeted often, because I don't know how demanding that demographic is. But yeah, I am off next week because my roommate is going out of town. She's going to Phoenix to visit her boyfriend, and so I have the house to myself. And so I'm taking a week off of work, and I'm just gonna get a bunch of stuff done around the house and not have to worry about work. I mean, I work from home, right? But I don't. When I'm at home, I gotta be online and be doing stuff. So it's nice to be able to take off and have a staycation, even though I work from home, because then I can just focus on stuff and not have to worry about meetings or getting things done and, having to run and finish all my stuff first before I get anything done. Anyways, so next week is going to be really nice. I'm going to have a whole house this weekend. I'm going to have the whole house myself. It'll be great. It'll be fun. But we'll be back Thursday. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but we'll figure it out. We will figure it out. I get so much out of these first looks when you don't like the game. Interesting. I mean, let me be very clear. There's a distinction, in my opinion, between whether I like the game or I dislike the game, and whether I think the game is good or whether I think the game is bad. Like, I think Ryutama was designed really well. It just wasn't for me. Chubo's I found very confusing to read, and it wasn't for me. Which doesn't mean it's not good for you, but I found it to be very confusing to read. This game, actually kind of in a weird way, interests me, but I just found the mechanics to be kind of clunky and kind of dissonant. So, yep, just me and the pups. I've been telling them, I'm like, puppies, we're gonna get the living room set up. We're gonna be on the couch. We're gonna cuddle. I'm gonna try to watch some movies, or maybe I'm gonna actually, I'm thinking of rewatching Record of Lodoss War. I don't think I've seen Record of Lodoss War in like 10 years. I really don't. I don't think I've seen it in a long time. So I might sit down and watch Record of Lodoss War. Maybe I'll watch Record of Lodoss War and watch Chronicles of the Heroic Knight. So the art was top notch. The illustration, amazing. The layout, beautiful. The graphic design, great, unparalleled. I loved it. The PDF well indexed. The sort of the here's a summary of what I'm about to tell you. Here's a detailed breakdown of each of the steps before we get into the things. I think it's fantastic. That's what I got. I got my DVDs of Record of Lodoss War. Actually, I got to go find a DVD player. I don't know that I have a DVD player anymore. I used to use like my PlayStation 2, I think, or something, but I don't even know if I have that anymore. It's boxed up somewhere. So I may not have a DVD player. Maybe I need to like go download it or something, or get it on Blu-ray or HD or whatever they have nowadays. It's been a long time for me. I do like physical media though. All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out. Thank you to my patrons for voting for this and supporting this. And thank you to all of you who came out and hung out and watched out. Break seems like it has some really interesting, strong mechanics. But I think their core resolution is a bit clunky. And the fact that they use a high roll and a low roll in the same game and potentially even in the same fight is very kind of clunky to me and not very elegant. So I would have liked to see something better there. But other than that, I thought there was a lot of interesting things there, a lot of degrees of proceduralism, and the game did stick to its truth. There's a lot of information there about journeying, crafting, downtime, forging bonds with your teammates, going into an adventure, rules for exploration. So the game did deliver there. There's a lot of mechanics that support that, but those mechanics suffer from being part of that kind of clunky resolution mechanic. But so that's going to do it for me, and we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Calm. Peace.
I need you more.